Well, I think we have everyone, all the aldermen are present tonight, and if you're ready to get started, we will get the March 25th Board of Mayor and Aldermen workshop started. This workshop will be in conjunction and under all of the applicable executive orders from Governor Lee regarding virtual meetings. So anyone that may not be present, visibly present, will need to address their name before they speak under each item. So tonight is our second workshop when it comes to our budget process. Our first workshop was 2 weeks ago when we talked about the general fund. Tonight we're going to be talking about our capital investment program. I thought it would be good just to kind of give a brief overview of that for the public that may be watching tonight, just so they're aware of what the CIP, as we call it, is. We work on this. This is actually this year we're going to amend this, and instead of a 5-year plan, we're going to make it a 6-year plan. We want to make sure that we're looking out even further at potential projects that may impact us into the future. But what the board does is look at projects that are at least $25,000 in expense. These projects are typically going to be a large expense that is not taken up year over year over year. We have several different areas that we look at, including parks, roads, sidewalks, and land acquisition in this budget, as well as other items as well, maybe purchasing large pieces of equipment or possibly looking at purchasing property for homes, things like that, like the Campbell Station Inn, for instance. So why do we do the capital investment program? It really gives us a systematic approach to capital financing, making sure that we are saving money in our budget to be able to fund these programs. We do not have town debt. We've been able to be very fortunate to save as we go and pay as we go. But we also want to look at alternative revenue streams. We look at grant opportunities as well. So you'll see a large number of grants in this budget. Many times if those grants don't come to fruition, we may have to push a project back. But overall, it allows us to really lengthen the amount of money that we as a town have for other areas that we need to focus on. One of the ways that we really focus on our CIP is to look at our annual retreat that we have with our Board of Mayor and Aldermen and our department heads. We really focus on what our priorities are based on our strategic plan. We want to make sure that we're keeping up to date on that. We also look at any kind of state, federal, or grant opportunities that may come before us. Those are always important to look at each and every year. And then the way our budget process works, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen obviously approves all of our budgets, the CIP, the general fund, state street aid fund, all at the same time. But in this case, for the CIP, we also take this to the Planning Commission and they review it. They don't necessarily, and they can make recommendations to the board, but ultimately it's the board's decision on where they want to and what they'd like to do with these projects in the CIP. So tonight we have broken down the CIP into 3 major areas. They include general government, parks, and engineering. We've got a quick snapshot of what those line items look like, or at least the major line items look like over the next 6 years. And we're going to be talking about each of the projects that go into these line items. And I know the board was given a packet earlier today that certainly has more of the detail on each of these projects as we go through them. I thought tonight since we are virtual, what I'll try to do is I want to go through each project with you briefly. If y'all have questions, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen have questions, then I'll give a little pause after each time I'm done talking for y'all to jump in and ask questions about any of the projects that we have. Our department heads are on the line. They can answer more specific questions if I can't, but we want to make sure that at least you understand each of the projects. And then once we get through all the projects, then we'll circle back and open it up for the board to talk about where you may want to, see these projects, if you'd like to see them pushed out or move forward or not even put in place at all. So these are all the discussions that we want to have tonight. So our first project that we're going to discuss is under the general government category, and that is the Campbell Station Inn building improvements. This project is this would be the final phase of the Campbell Station Inn. It's the interior renovations to the inn. We have done everything on the outside. We've done the public park and area out there. The inside is certainly usable, but it is not the plastered walls. There's plumbing that probably still needs to be done for if we wanted to make it office space. And this is one of those discussion items we talked at the retreat about, that we do need to decide kind of a final use for the interior. So certainly we want to do that first before we look at doing the improvements, but I think we could certainly do that quickly.
So David, is this where we ask questions or do we wait?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So does the $250,000 line item include plumbing for bathrooms, or I guess restrooms inside, and sinks and whatnot?
I think it would be a very minor bathroom, so yes, it would include that. We have the restroom facility outside the building that can be used for the building for people that come in. But I think if you had an office space or something like that, I think the upstairs certainly would need to have some restroom facilities there for the people that occupy it.
I agree. So would that $250,000, you think, cover that? How did we
sure hope so. Right, we sure hope so, Alderman. I'm not, we don't know for sure until we get an estimate back from that. We've done the HVAC, we've done some basic electrical in the building.
Okay.
The main things we still need to do are plastering of the walls, possibly some wallpaper. The floors need to be refinished, so things like that need to be done on the inside.
Could we get at some point like a line item of how the $250,000, I guess all the estimates that we are going to be looking at tonight, have a line item what is included in that?
In the estimates for the numbers?
Yeah, I mean, well, just in terms of the $250,000, like I don't know how that number was come up with, but to me, I think it needs to have water running in it. I mean, I don't know what we're going to do with a building that doesn't have water going in it. And so it needs to have at least a kitchenette of some kind. It needs to have at least a bathroom that's usable. And so, I don't know if anybody would want an office building with an outhouse, which is basically what we have right now. And so I don't know if that number is true until I see the line items. But when I say true, what I mean is it represents all the expenses that we think that we need to incur in order to get this to be some kind of, whether it's office space or retail, it's going to need a restroom.
And I think Alderman,
yeah,
sorry about that, Alderman. I think the main question that we would have is just what do we want to do with the inside? What kind of use do we want to have? We've talked about a number of things over the years, and I think the board just needs to finalize what that is. And once we have that, we can probably give you a much better picture of that. We did have more money in the budget for this interior renovation in prior budgets. Many of that was cut back when we went through the pandemic last year and really cut back all of our CIP projects quite a bit. This may be one that we need to go back and revisit and see if there's enough in there for it. But that's what the initial price estimate was, just based on kind of a very, not making it a house museum, because if you make it a house museum, you're really talking quite a bit of money for that.
Well, so like, for instance, I'm assuming the Farragut Museum couldn't be moved there because of access. I don't know, but to me, whether it's going to be office building, whether it's going to be retail, the vice mayor had mentioned something about a possible art gallery. People are going to not want to use that building if there's not a restroom inside. So we might as well go ahead and just assume with the $250,000, there should be a restroom and a kitchenette of some kind with a minimal of a sink. Like a galley kitchenette, I guess, because if you're a person who works in a gallery, you're still going to have to use the restroom. And they're not going to run outside, especially in weather like this tonight. So that's not going to happen. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Can I add in just to that? We certainly want flexibility built in as well, because we may determine a use and then a couple of years from now or 10 years from now, it may transition into another use. So we do. I think you're right. We need to envision, could it be used as an office? What does that need to be? Could it be used as like art studio space? What does that need? And I would think that anybody anything that we're putting in there would probably need at least a restroom, possibly a men's and women's room, and a small kitchenette, like what you're saying. So certainly, I think there's we got to really think about not just how we think the community would like it to be used for now, but that space will certainly evolve over the years. And can we get on the front end of anticipating some of the resilience we need out of that building?
This is Alderman Pinchuk.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Over the last 4 or 5 years, I've heard at least so many different options, so many different ways we could use this building. And I guess I'm not ready to put the $250,000 into this year's budget because I mean, our ideas keep changing, and I think it's important that we get it right. And I definitely want to move forward, and I just don't think it should be in this year's budget. I think we need to have some workshops. I think we need to have more discussion, and then possibly put it into the following year's budget or even 2 years down the road. But there's just too many different things have been discussed, and I don't think we're clear at all in what direction we want to go. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, Ron, you took the words out of my mouth. I feel like we're kind of maybe going at this backwards. I think we need to finalize the use and then plan accordingly. Obviously, like we said, I mean, we're going to need restrooms, but you know, as far as what the inside of that's going to be, I just can't see earmarking 250 just because we know some stuff needs to be done and we have absolutely no idea what it's going to be. So I would rather plan this year and community feedback and have some workshops on the possibilities and then do the planning of what needs to be done. It may be $100,000 and it may be $600,000. I mean, I think 250 is just kind of a best guess for us not even knowing what it's going to be. So I like the idea of let's decide the use and then let's see what we need to put in there from there.
I'm fine with that. I still want to spend money to go back and rework and undo what we spent money on. So that's why I decided, if we're going to have to spend money, at least put a bathroom in it, because nobody is going to use that building without indoor restroom. Like that's just like common sense. I mean, it's not going to happen. So, and I agree with y'all. I think we should just wait because I think the kind of restrooms and the kind of kitchenette could very well depend on what we think the use is going to be.
Mayor Williams.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mayor.
Let's do something a little bit different. Let's get some quotes on a restroom facility. I think we can, if you look at the town hall, we've got a men's and women's, and then we've got a both for this size of a building, which is when you get to looking at it, it's not really that big on the inside. To try to put 2 restrooms on each floor, you're going to consume quite a bit of the building that way. I don't see how we can make it ADA compliant. So regardless of what we do, without putting some sort of elevator in, which is another space consumer. So we're kind of limited on what we can do with it, but everybody ideal, it's going to have a restroom of some sort, even if it is just an ADA compliant single male female type of restroom. So I think a quote for that would be a good thing, as opposed to budgeting $250,000 for something we're not sure what it's going to be, and all it would be a placeholder. So my thoughts.
Well, board, this is David again. I will be happy to, I think we need to obviously have some workshops on this particular item. I think if we push the budget part of this out for another year, that gives us plenty of time to go through that process. And also we'd probably need to get our architects on board just to give us some ideas and what the interior cost, once we know what they want to be, will cost us. One, just just as an FYI, the reason those restrooms are outside is that they are ADA compliant and they meet all the definition of meeting ADA compliant restrooms for that building. They're close enough to be able to utilize. So that way, if we do restrooms on the inside of the building, we should not have to say make them ADA compliant. We'll be able to fit them to what the restroom building, was before. So, it was a house, obviously. And it had
That's
two
good.
restrooms in it. So
That's good. Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay.
It's good.
if you like, we can move on to the next item, and that is the climate controlled storage building at Public Works. This would be, and I forgot to mention on your Excel spreadsheet that we gave you, we've listed each of these projects 1, 2, 3, 4, all down the line. So as I refer to these, if you want to look at those sheets, you can see exactly where they are in the budget process before we get back to them again. But this is a climate controlled storage building, and kind of with this project is project number 3, which is demolition of the Dimick House. As we built out the McPhee Park next phase, the Dimick House has been used for storage for quite a few years now, but that building is becoming more of a nuisance as people get to see it and be able to get to it. We have many things in there that we would like to preserve, so we believe that we need to have an access controlled unit at our Public Works facility that would allow us to move that storage over there. And then we would then demo the house at the Dimick House and just rough grade for now until we're ready to go. So those two projects, $273,000 for the climate controlled building, and then another $30,000 for the demolition of the Dimick House.
This Alderman Pinchot, no questions. I think we need both, and I'm all for them.
Mayor Williams, have we approached anyone about picking that house up and buying it, moving it? The guy there at Lovell Road seems to be somebody that cuts those things loose from the foundation and buys them, replants them.
Yeah, Mayor, I'm no expert on that, but we're certainly able to give somebody a call. If you know of someone, I can just get with you after the meeting and find out a good contact for that. Okay, if there's no other questions on that, we'll move on to the next item. And this is the Kingston Pike Pedestrian Underpass at North Fork Turkey Creek. I know we had a lot of discussion at our board workshop about pedestrian walkways, sidewalks, greenways, and you're going to see a lot of those over the next few projects. This is one that the town worked on a few years ago, and we got some engineering done on it. We're ready to submit to FEMA for review, and then we put a pause on that for the time being. This would be bringing that project back up, designed to finish up that FEMA review and a little bit more design work. You can see would be in this coming year's budget, along with the land acquisition and construction of around $335,000 total. And this would go north-south under an existing culvert that's behind, actually would connect to the Greenway that's behind the Kroger building, and then head north over to the opposite side of Kingston Pike, get you closer to the 35 North facility, as well as the veterinarian clinic across the street.
This Alderman Pinchot, I've got to say that 3-4 years ago when this came up, I was against it then. I'm still not real sure about it today. I would like to see this tabled and postponed maybe another year until we get the Kingston Pike corridor study, which is item number 31 on these pages we're looking at. It's a study for pedestrian enhancements, and see if this is in fact going to work with other pedestrian enhancements we're going to come up with. And if not, we're looking to save $335,000. So those are my concerns and my thoughts.
This is Vice Mayor Coughlin. I am actually supportive of this project, but supportive of also moving it out, mostly because I'd rather see us fund the Sonia Drive Phase 1 sidewalk in this current year. And we're using this as a a redundancy. They already have a crosswalk. We're thinking that the people from the apartments will probably want to cross over and go to 35 North or whatever's going on in the main intersection of our town. But they have a crosswalk at Brook Lawn that they can conveniently walk up and then walk up Kingston Pike. So this is a redundancy. So to me, it's not a necessity. And I'm happy with moving it out 1 year and seeing how things develop. Obviously doing more studies, but generally supportive, but not for this year.
This is Alderman, and I'll echo the same thing. I'm generally supportive, but I would like to wait on the pedestrian study and just to see how things get built out on Biddle Farms.
Mayor Williams, I echo that.
Alderman Meyer, I agree.
Well, that's easy. We'll work on moving that out another year, and that's not a problem. All right, our next project is the land acquisition. We have had this in our budget for many, many years. We have been able to purchase a lot of property over time by saving for land acquisition, either the Campbell Station Inn or parts of the McPhee Park that we've done recently. We would project to save and put away $300,000 per year into the land acquisition fund. Those monies, obviously over 6 years, would equate up to 1.8 million. And then that goes for any kind of land acquisition. It could be right-of-way acquisition if we needed that for a certain Greenway project or something in that nature, easements. So this is, again, something that we just plan for to put in our savings account. And when the board feels like there's an opportunity to purchase something, we can. Any questions on that? If not, we'll move on to project number 6, and that's the Sonia Drive sidewalk project. I know this was also discussed at our recent retreat with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. What we have here is broken down into design, land, and right-of-way cost, and then construction costs of approximately $560,000. We have that broken out in your CIP over the next 3 years. Usually takes us a little time to design something, then get the right-of-way acquired, and then and do the project. Certainly, if we can do it faster, we can try to, but that's the way we have it in the CIP currently. And this would get to the current sidewalk, which is terminated, I think, right at Admiral Road, and that then heads to the west towards the schools, the high school, the intermediate, and the middle school. There's an entrance there, but this would at least get all the way down Sonia Drive, down to Oren Road, and connect it with a sidewalk for pedestrian access.
And this is Vice Mayor Pavlin. I understand it takes time to do design and right-of-way acquisition, and perhaps might push out the sidewalk portion from Admiral Road to Dundee, but I would like to move it into this fiscal year because that is the most important part. That road is not even wide enough to stripe. They are in the parental responsibility zone in that area. Kids are forced to wait off the side of the street or close to the street for the ones that do take the bus for the primary school. So it's not a safe area, and we need to give those parents some peace of mind and encourage our kids to be walking to school, because that's really one of our goals. So even though I know it might take some time, I would like to at least fund that portion of it in this fiscal year.
Hey, Louise, are you saying move up the land and right of way to add it to the design for this year and then take the construction of it next year?
No, I'm saying the design is going to be for the whole thing, I assume. So do the design for the whole thing, but carve out the right of way and construction, which I think comes out to $220,000 for the Admiral Road and Dundee Road, or do the design for the whole thing and then do the Admiral Road, Dundee Road right of way acquisition. And we don't need to do the right of way acquisition for the entire length of it, because that's just going to drag the project down, slow it down. Let's get this portion done, and then we can all breathe a sigh of relief and then take our time with the rest of it.
That's phasing it. Phasing it's a good idea. Yeah.
Louise, so are you saying you want to put $280,000 into this coming year? the way I read it.
It looks like, Daryl, can you tell me that breakdown? Because it looks like you folded the cost of design into all three of them.
I'll defer to Brandon on that. I know he did the write-up, but I'm thinking the design is for all three, but right-of-way is all three, but then the construction has been broken up. Separately.
This is Brandon Tupper, Assistant Town Engineer. You're correct, Louise, that
24.
you're
Scott,
correct,
you're
Louise,
not
that we put the design cost into the phase one portion there. So the 220 encompasses the design of the whole project and then right away in construction of phase one.
I guess I'll ask this question of Brandon and Daryl. How quickly do you think you could get design work started, right of way acquired, and actually construct? Could we do it in one fiscal year, or would it take 2 fiscal years?
I think we could find ourselves in 2 fiscal years. I think we might be able to have it under construction by the end of a year. But
Here's
see
what
it
if we put it in this fiscal year, I can give some relief to those parents to say, okay, this is the process. It may take some more time, but we have it funded. And so we've got to go through the process of design and right-of-way acquisition, and sometimes that takes time. But if it doesn't take a lot of time, all of a sudden you've got all these wonderfully willing residents, and you can get your right-of-way done fairly quickly. Then we have the funds to proceed to construction. I don't want to stall it just because we think maybe. I would like to see that we are funding this because we've funded projects that we've had to extend into following years anyway. So fund it this year, and then if it's not finished in that time frame, then you move the funding to the following year.
So Alderman Pavlin, are you talking about going ahead and putting the entire $560,000 in this year's budget for the CIP?
No. I'm asking us to do the design for the whole thing, right-of-way acquisition for the area from Admiral Road to Dundee Road, and construction from Admiral Road to Dundee Road. And it sounds like from Brandon, what Brandon said, that's $220,000. Does that make sense?
It does. Any other aldermen have any comments about that?
This Alderman Pinchuk, I'm fine with that.
Mayor Williams, fine with it?
Alderman Burnett, I'm fine with that.
Well, Alderman Meyer, I'm fine with it too.
Unanimous.
Okay, we'll go back and rework those numbers and get those in the budget the proper way. All right, Town Hall renovations is project number 7. Our Town Hall is at the 31 year mark this year. We have slowly grown into it over time, but we certainly have, as we've grown, staff has been put into, closets and different things that we have kind of built out over the years, and has not been really optimized into proper office space for some. And so we wanted to look at, in this next year's budget, a design and really a conceptual design of an architect to come in and just give us some thoughts and ideas on how we can update Town Hall and how we can make it a little more user-friendly for staff and for the public. And then, assuming that goes well, then we would look at construction documents the next year, and then construction the year after. Again, we are just now starting to talk to architects to get some better ideas about this. But this is something from a long-term perspective we'd like to try to do here in the next 2 to 3 years.
This is all Pinchuk. I'm all for these changes. I just got a question. How did you come up with those numbers?
Great question, Alderman. Right now, I'm meeting with an architect tomorrow. So our meeting's a little premature for me to get better numbers to you. I think these overall numbers in the future, what we're looking at is We spent around $120,000 on restroom renovations this past year to make them ADA compliant. We have several restrooms in town hall that would probably, we need to look at making either more user-friendly or ADA compliant, depending on how they're accessed. So those could eat up a lot of budget pretty quickly. I think also looking at the board chambers, if there's some renovations we need to do there, those could also add up fairly quickly. So that's why that number's in there. It could be low or it could be high. I'm not sure yet when it comes to construction cost, at least.
Yeah, this is Alderman Burnett. I think it's a good plan. I think in the next 12 to 18 months, we'll have a better idea what the new normal is. We'll fully utilize and see what space we have over at the community center that we can take further advantage of. But I'm good with taking 12 months, getting a good plan in. And I'm honestly a little afraid that it's going to be a lot more than $1 million, but at least we'll know after we get those numbers from the architect.
Mayor Williams, agree.
Okay.
I guess my question is, and you guys are, this is very new into the process. We're not even quite sure what it is we're trying to accomplish. I mean, you're looking at the spaces that like community development's in and engineering's in? Are we looking at those as well? And our administration, is this, I guess you're gonna have an architect go and look at the building and what are we looking at?
Yes, ma'am. Ultimately, what we want to try to do is look at every department and how everything is laid out. Again, some people have just kind of been put in a corner and that's kind of been their office for the last even 10 years or longer, right? So we want to try to optimize the flow of town hall for the public to be able to access our areas a lot easier. You know, right now you may come into community development, but then engineering is, you know, you really don't have access to engineering, let's say, or even codes, you know, and they don't have a lot of space to meet with people either. When they need to meet with somebody, it's at least the community development department, when you start having a lot of people come and meet at the front desk and then they want to talk about a project, there's really no place and it gets pretty loud up there at times and it's hard to concentrate, and especially for everyone that works up front. So we just want to look at all activities here at Town Hall, figure out ways that they can be optimized. We also have the community room now that frankly, you know, used to be our community room for the public. Now we've got the community center for those activities to take hold. So we want to try to figure out how we can utilize that space better as well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding was that used to be where community development was long ago, where the community room is now in the town hall?
I believe so, yes, ma'am, many years ago.
Okay, so I mean, that is space that we can, although we really get to spread out with COVID, we really get to spread out in there, and that's kind of very nice.
Right. And Parks and Rec has moved out, and that's a space that obviously, you know, there is some offices up there that could be even more utilized than they are now. So. All right.
This is Alderman Myers. This is Alderman Myers. So my only comment is that I certainly don't want people working in cramped offices. There are priorities that have come to my attention since this document has been put together that are not even on here. And so, you know, part of me wants to think that, you know, maybe we could just look at some of the space, throw up some cubicles. You know, you've got the whole community room now available. It wasn't before. But I have a feeling that there's some pretty pertinent activities that I think that we need to focus on with Grigsby Chapel. And I think we'll get on that here in a little bit. That's not even on here. And so I hear you. I'm sure it is cramped. Don't want to take away from that. But to your point, David, there's a whole department that's moved to the community center now. And maybe it's just my ignorance. Maybe I need to meet with you and you walk me through and show me what exactly about this building needs to be redesigned in a way that would cost us $1 million. But I'm not comfortable with this line item at all until I have more information about that. So maybe we can just meet. Doesn't mean I won't be comfortable as soon as we meet. It's just I'll be honest, I don't get up there very much. I don't see everybody's offices. I see Allison's and I see yours. So maybe I just need to get up there and kind of take a view myself. But there are streets that hundreds, probably thousands of Farragut residents use every day that, in my opinion, are extraordinarily dangerous, that have to be dealt with now. And so that's my priority. And if we can make some allowances for the building, the town hall building, so be it. But I'm not comfortable with this at all until maybe you and I talk.
Sure, be happy to.
Okay, thank you.
This Alderman Pinchot, I want to make one other comment. What I'm approving here is the $50,000 for design work. I think the amount for year 2 and 3 down the road, it could change drastically in either direction depending on what we want to do. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm approving the $50,000 for this current budget year.
Mayor,
Right, and I just,
the same.
yeah, and just so everybody's aware, I think the board does know that the budget year that we actually budget for is this current FY 2022 that starts July 1st and ends June 30th of next year. So all the other budget years that are out can ebb and flow. They can go up and down. They can move in and out. Just depends on what projects come forward, and then obviously how costs go with the project. So really the intent of this is that first piece, which is the design piece, and just trying to determine, okay, what is it that we really want to do? Or at least in our minds, what would be the best way to optimize the town hall? And then they can give us some cost estimates around what that would be. And if we find that those costs are just too extreme, we can step back and reevaluate. So that's the real purpose of this whole line item.
Reprioritize. I mean, you can phase it, but just like anything else, we can decide
Absolutely.
this is what's most important. Let's do this, and then put that out to an out year when certainly this is a lot of these CIPs go through different renditions of boards, so it'll be a while. But yeah, I understood. That's exactly what I'm kind of approving is what we're talking about for this fiscal year.
I'm not approving it until I understand what the problems are. So, but that could change between now and our next meeting. So David, I'll reach out to y'all and maybe kind of walk me around the building and let's see what the issues are.
Sure, be happy to.
That'd be helpful. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we have Evans Road is our next project number 8, and this is for a Greenway connection. This would extend the current Greenway that is on the north side of Evans Road that just is past the farm at Willow Creek down to an existing Greenway that is at the Price Farm development there. It's about, I can't know how many feet this is, Daryl. I can't see her off the top of my head. Do you recall?
I believe, Brandon, you have that right up. I'm sorry.
It's 1,400 feet.
The 1,400.
That's what it says on the sheet.
There you go. 1,400 feet. Estimated cost again of this is $220,000 for this Greenway connection. Any questions about Evans Road Greenway connection?
So are we having to purchase any right of way on this? Yes, I see that. Land of right of way is 30,000. Construction is 160,000. So are we looking at design and right of way for this year then?
Yes, ma'am. So the way we have got it broken down right now is to do the 60,000, which would be for design and right of way, hopefully all in this first year, and then construction in year 2.
Okay.
Which would be FY 2023.
All right, and I'm completely supportive of this project. This is a long needed connection. We've kind of waffled back and forth on whether we're going to improve Evans Road and wait for Evans Road to be improved before we put this in. And I know a lot of residents are itching for this connection to be made. So I'm happy that we're looking at it and funding it.
This is Alderman Pinchot. I agree 100%.
Yep, this is Alderman Burnett. I agree as well. I mean, this is a major piece of a major connection that we need to make on the south side, which is getting this whole westerly Farragut area, kind of McPhee Road, Evans Road, Boyd Station, connected over to the Greenway over on Turkey Creek Road. So there's this one, there's the next one that we'll discuss in just a second. It's still kind of missing one piece to really get it over there to the Greenway in front of Brixworth, but yeah, very supportive of making this one out of maybe 3 connections that need to be made to fully connect that side with this side as well.
All right. If there's any other comments,
I'm open to it, Mrs. Aldermeyer, and I'm open to it. Depending what else what other priorities we have. We have 35 to get through, but certainly open to it.
Mayor Williams, open with it.
all right, thank you all. Item number 9, project number 9 is the Little Turkey Creek Greenway. And this is going to connect where currently that the Brookmere subdivision, there is a bridge that is spanning over the creek. And this would connect on the east side of the creek from Brookmere all the way down to the Sheffield subdivision Greenway, which connects into Virtue Road. Pretty good section of Greenway here. It would be over, I think, a 2-year period as well. I believe that's what we've got. No, actually, we've got that out in 2023. But it would be for design, land acquisition, and construction. Fortunately, we have an easement already through Brookmere. We own a piece of property that connects much of that area through there. There would just be a couple of pieces of property that we'd have to work with easements on to get to the Greenway there. But estimated cost of this project is $360,000.
But we're not voting on that, right? Because it's in a different budget year.
It would be in the 2023 budget year. If the board members felt like they wanted to move that forward or backward or any place else at this point, you're more than welcome to let us know. But that's where we have it projected right now.
David, this Alderman Pinchot, can we do that all in 1 year? All 3 parts of that project?
I will again punt that over to Daryl or Brandon to see. The other, I just want to make one comment for the board. One of the ways we also look at this CIP is how much our staff can handle in 1 year. There's a lot of projects that we haven't gotten to yet, and I know everybody wants to get things done as quick as possible, but we only have so many people to be able to do that too. So we tried to place things as we think things would start construction versus design, and how the staff can also handle those. But we can certainly continue to maneuver things around as y'all feel ready to do that. So Daryl, I'll let you move forward on that answer.
One of the things that can typically take the longest amount of time is right-of-way. Right-of-way, or in this case, it'd be easements. The more tracks you have, the more likelihood you're going to have difficulties along the way. In this case, we already have, or we are in the process of getting an easement from the Brookmere open space that will take us down to the town's property. We actually, that is public property on the east side of the creek. I don't know if you can tell on the map there, just below the bridge. From that point all the way down to where you can see that the dashed red line enters the back of the second parcel there. Bottom line, there's about 2 or 3 tracks on this. Shouldn't be a lot of trouble to get easements there, but I'm assuming we'll be able to do that. If that's the case, we could have the project going. It would take a full year to do it, but we could have it underway.
Mayor Williams, I think this is one that a lot of people's been waiting on. It seems like all the pieces have to fit before we can do it. And the Brookmere getting that particular portion of their project done was the piece that needed to be done before we could do much of anything else, and which would also require that bridge, which I think will be done sometime or another soon.
This Alderman Pinchot again. I was not wanting to move this project up. I was just wondering if we could split that cost between fiscal year 23 and 24. That's what I was looking at.
Yep, this is Alderman Burnett. I was wondering the same thing, kind of how we looked at doing on the Evans, as well as taking design and putting it into this year, which takes a little off of staff for having to do the whole thing in 1 year next year.
So right now, the way the budget is presented currently is that the whole project would be done in FY 2023, which is 2 years out. So if the board would want to divvy that up and do design in the FY 2022 budget, we'd have to, obviously look at that, or we can design in 2023 and right-of-way acquisition, or in this case, easement acquisition, and then construct in 2024.
I'm for the wagon.
I wouldn't want to push that out to 2024. I think it's too critical. I mean, we've got essentially 3 pieces that we need to connect to get over on that side. One's Evans. This is another one. And there's still one extra one that we have to make that light connection. So I would be more in favor of moving part of it up to make the next fiscal year less stress on the staff as opposed to moving it out.
This is Alderman Meyer, and I'm not comfortable with moving it up. The South Ward's already got a Greenway connection happening with the Evans Road, and we haven't even gotten to Grigsby Chapel, which I think is interesting, is buried on line 35. And there's a lot of stuff that we need to talk about. There's literally resident safety at risk, and it's line 35, which I'm a little bit irritated about. So I hear what y'all are saying, but as far as I'm concerned, the South Ward can have 1 Greenway per year. And no, I'm not interested in pushing forward. We need to figure out what we're going to do about Grigsby Chapel, because there's accidents and there are people getting hurt, and it needs to be resolved. That should be, actually, my opinion, should be number 1.
Scott, we'll get to that, okay?
I hear you, but I don't
presented.
want Grigsby Chapel washed over simply because we want a Greenway on the south side. The south side's already got a Greenway with Evans Road. So we can do both Greenways, but we can phase it out between 3 years. We don't have to push everything forward. So I'm not comfortable with moving it forward.
Scott, we're asking for design, okay?
Okay.
Grigsby Chapel is a big conversation that we're going to have here shortly. And I
understand.
think everybody will be involved with it. So let's keep this moving with what we've got in front of us, instead of trying to hold up something based on something that's just being planned right now. I mean, something you've got to remember, and I hope everybody can remember, is at some point in time, we're going to be working on the rest of Virtue Road. Okay. And we hope right now we've got a study going for a possible grant on that. So let's don't fog up the whole picture here with something that possibly could be taken care of another way anyway. Okay. I mean, we can talk about it. We can put it on there for design, and then whatever happens with let's say we get a grant, and in that grant includes some of this right here, then it's a moot point anyway. So let's not get hung up on something that we're just actually getting design numbers for anyway. Okay.
Well, and I hear you, but to me, I don't see design. I see everything happening, $360,000 happening in 23, unless I'm missing something.
Well, by 23,
That's why I asked you to design up to next year so that it separates that out and doesn't have as big of a burden having to complete it all in 1 year.
David made a good point on staff burden, okay? And I think Daryl can attest to that, and so can Brandon. There's only so much they can do in a day. And by splitting that up, that's a good thing. So, and probably by 23, we'll know what the study is going to be about as far as the rest of Virtue Road and all the way down to the road improvement that we'll get at and the Greenway that will be coming in from the 132 acres. So there, I think if we just hold on to what we got and let nature run its course, I think we'll be a little bit more better educated probably next year or year after. Okay.
So are you saying, Mayor, 360,000 in fiscal year 23 and not moving anything forward into 2022?
I think if we split it up and just get a little bit of money for design and then put the rest of it, then by the time we get to 23, I mean, Daryl and I, neither one can speak for what will happen with TPO, but the chances of that happening, you got a dice roll going there that it possibly could happen, and then you won't have anything other than whatever, if it's an 80-20 or whatever it may be, okay?
Mhm.
I think really if you think about that part of it, you know, you're gambling on that you're going to get that. If you don't, then yeah, it'd be in 2023. So I think it's a worthwhile gamble. Daryl can correct me if he feels that I'm dead wrong, but
I would caution, typically, it's very awkward if you begin a project with totally local funds and then request federal dollars for the construction phase. TDOT's local programs office has a little heartburn over that.
I mean, I don't want to speak for staff, but I'm assuming there's a reason why y'all didn't put it in 2022. And it's probably because y'all have lots going on. So I don't have any problem with phasing it. I just say do the design in 23 and then you can do construction in 24. Because you have design on a different Greenway on Evans Road in 22, and then you have construction in 23. And then you're phasing it. So you're only doing design one time, and then the next year you're doing construction, and then the next one starts the design and construction.
I feel good about that.
Daryl, may I ask a question? I guess I'm hearing myself. Someone needs to mute. Okay. With regard to the location of that walking trail, if we went and tried to get TPO dollars for the Virtue Road construction, would that trail and its location still be considered along the roadside, like something as part of that project, considering there's a little Turkey Creek runs along the road?
I think it would be difficult to include that in, you're talking about phase 2 of Virtue Road. I
Yes,
think it would be hard to include it in that simply because you're beginning and ending it completely. I mean, it's separate.
yes,
Throughout
that's what I've heard from, I guess, when you do road construction projects like that
Right.
if there's that much separation, it seems to be a completely different project. We actually might be able to get some grant funds for the pedestrian. I know that from year to year, they've had some pedestrian, although where they have to be on state highways. The last ones had to be on state highways. Is that correct?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. But, you know, they might open that up and there might be a new grant with new requirements and we could go from that direction.
Right.
I would leave it all in 2023 because that's not what we're voting on for this year. We're voting on funding for 2022. If that is what you're right, what holds something up is the right of way acquisition. You have minimal you have to deal with on this one. It's conceivable that could be handled pretty quickly and you could get it all done next year. And that way we're leaving open the discussion that we need to have when the engineering projects come up about Fretz Road. So that's my 3 cents.
I can live with that. I'm not comfortable with moving anything from this project into 22 and will not support it.
All right, I think we've heard from everyone so far on this project. Just as a FYI, so the way our budget and just the way the CIP works is we have general government projects, then we have parks projects, then we have streets or engineering projects, which are mostly streets. We're just going in order with where the general government is, and then we're going to move on to parks, and then we're going to move on to streets. There's no priority of any of these other than the fact that there's some that are in FY 2022 right now that could move out, or things that are in 2023 to 27 could move forward depending on what the board's priorities are. So as we get to each item, we'll discuss them and you guys will continue to let us know where we like to move things. What we will do is after the end of this workshop, we'll go back and revise the CIP, and then I'll get with staff to figure out, okay, where everything has been revised, can we handle that workload, you know, going from one year to the next? And if that's the case, then everything should be fine. If there's an issue, if we see an issue, then we may have to come back to you and ask you for another workshop to discuss a little further on it. So, all right, the next item that we have is project number 10, and that is the Red Mill Dam Trailhead. And this is a piece of property that the town recently got donated by a very generous donor. It's got a old historic dam there from the quarries way back in the early 1900s. And so what we need to do as part of the agreement to accept that property was to get a trailhead back there so at least people could get access to it and see the dam. It's a very heavily wooded area right now. So we're looking at a kind of a primitive type of trailhead, probably not much. This is actually where the parking lot area is FUD owns that property. We'd have to still work with them on an agreement, but they have been open-minded to allowing us to have some parking in that spot. So we have an estimated project cost of $150,000, which would not be until the FY 2023 budget year, 2 years out. Any thoughts on that project?
I do, just a quick question, David. How much parking is there in that lot?
Well, right now you could probably park several cars there, but it's not a parking lot per se. It's just kind of a driveway down to a kind of an open dirt road type of area.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. I can't tell you off the top of my head how many we could fit.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. Is that the only way you're going to be able to access in is to come all the way down to basically to Turkey Creek Drive and then go in?
Again, I'll defer to engineering, but that's a pretty steep slope in that area.
It is.
Coming off of
Okay.
Concord or coming off of Campbell Station and Concord right there.
Okay.
Just on first blush, it's coming from either direction, whether you're coming from Turkey Creek Road or Concord, it's steep. I think we could probably tie it in better coming off of Concord. I'm sorry for my primitive drawing. I didn't draw that with any really good scale. That's kind of a parking spot down there. I think you could probably get, I mean, you can look at the perspective there for the vehicles in the photograph. I can see easily 4 cars or so.
All right. I'm just curious about access from certainly from people from Turkey Creek Road are going to have access to it fairly easily, but anyone coming down from down Concord from the heart of town, it's not the most convenient way to access it, but it is what it is. Topography, it wins every time.
Anybody else have any thoughts on this project? If not, we'll move on to project 11, which is the Little Turkey Creek Greenway. And this is going from the enclave at Sheffield to Turkey Creek Road. So we talked about just a few minutes ago about getting down to the Sheffield Greenway connection there at Virtue. There is actually through the enclave some areas they will have already done as part of their development process. And so the idea is to pick up where they would leave off with the Greenway and on this screen you see there in blue. And that would go down to Turkey Creek Road and then connect into existing sidewalk that we have on Turkey Creek Road. I guess this area overall is fairly challenging to connect for it ended. And also with existing infrastructure, we try to utilize that in order to save costs, if at all possible. This is not an easy site either. It would require some easements from the property owner to be able to get that Greenway connection made. So again, this is kind of our best case scenario of how we can get that connected in. But Daryl or Brandon will also answer any specific questions about topography or anything else that's going on in that area.
It's not, it's a little steep as you approach Turkey Creek Road. Coming through the Galbraith property, though, I mean, that is their backyard. The thing is, this is the most direct way that we can get back to Virtue Road with the Greenway. We would be able to pick up the Greenway with Virtue Road Phase 2. I'm thinking on the west side of Virtue Road. So it's extremely important that we get to Turkey Creek Road and get it across the bridge. Because eventually we're going to have the Greenway all the way to Boyd Station.
Darryl, has anyone talked to that property owner yet? Do we know if they're even receptive to that easement?
We have not talked with them yet.
Thus, this project could be a challenge to try to get through. That's why we have it 3 years out. It's actually scheduled right now in the CIP for FY 2024. Obviously, another alternative would be just to have folks go through the Sheffield development. So they have to go a little farther up to, I guess it looks like Eagle Crest Lane, where the project or the current Greenway comes out to, and then come down to the main entrance of Sheffield, and then come down to Turkey Creek Road to get to Virtue. So that's a little bit more circuitous, as Daryl just mentioned, but that's another way to get there.
That may be the only way we can get there.
Thank you, David. That's an important point that I meant to include.
All right, any other comments on project 11 at this point? If not, we'll move on to project 12, which is the Brixworth Greenway connection. Sorry, I was muted. I apologize. So this project, project 12, would be connecting from the end of the current Turkey Creek Greenway that ends right at Brixworth subdivision. Again, would need to work with the Brixworth Homeowners Association to make this even possible. But this would go through their HOA open space and then connect into the Sheffield Greenway that they have a connection there at their pool area. So, or somewhere around that area. This would be an estimated cost of $370,000. And again, this project is way out there into 2027. So this is about a 6-year out project in order to do. But certainly it would be a challenge, I think, to get a lot of, the neighborhoods on board with this one. But we just wanted to show it to the board.
To me, Dave, this is one of the easily most challenging but most important connections we have, very similar to Smith Road connection on the north side. Making that connection on the north side is super important and connects a whole other side of our town that couldn't get to the other side. And this is that junction point that is the issue for us. We're looking at Evans, we're looking at the other one to help get us to here, but having this one so far out, to me, it's way too far. I wouldn't necessarily advocate to put it in 22, but I don't know. Having it 6 years out is crazy because of how important this is.
Alderman Meyer, I second what Alderman Burnett said. I think it's too far out.
Well, you guys got to take a look at what we've got scheduled between now and then. We're just looking at general projects right now. You go down to the road construction projects and we're looking at virtual.
No, Louise, I was lectured that we're supposed to look at each one of these individually. So I'm not going to look
understand,
at the heartburn that I have on item 35. But if we're looking at this line item, I agree with Drew that this is too far out.
Okay, I hear you. I understand both of what you're saying. I'm just pointing out that this becomes a prioritization thing for what we can handle on an annual basis. And quite frankly, I won't be in office in 2025, 2026, or 2027. So I'm just reminding you that.
Maybe not the office you're in currently, Louise.
Yeah, well, they've probably pushed it out that far because of some of the other projects that we have in other fiscal years, is all I'm saying. I agree that we should probably, I think it would be great to start a conversation, South Ward Aldermen, to start a conversation with Brixworth on this so that you can get the neighborhood involved and excited about it, because this is, there are a lot of people that use that Greenway and it just ends. And this is open space. This is their open space. And this is what we use throughout the town in all of our neighborhoods. We have this open space. So certainly scheduling is whenever it is, but I would love to know that the neighborhood's on board.
I would agree with that, Vice Mayor Pavlin, that we definitely want to get the neighborhood on board. We just, again, these are all for discussion to see if you want to move up, down, where you'd like to move these projects. So if there's any other questions or comments about the Brooksworth connection, if not, we can move on to the item number 13, project number 13, which is the Everett Road Greenway connector. And this is coming from the Fox Run subdivision. Now it has a connector that ends at Everett Road. And then there's a little bit of a gap there before you get around Everett Road down to Split Rail Farm. And Split Rail Farm has a connection that ends there at Everett Road. So not a large one. I think it's a pretty small project, could be done fairly easily, but we do have that pushed out quite a ways too, just based on priorities we've heard from the board in the past. And that's a $60,000 project out in FY 2027 at this point.
David, I didn't understand this when this was first presented, but the end of Fox Run is Stonehouse Lane. Is that correct? That
No.
road?
Yes.
I just don't
No.
know. What are we connecting to?
Oh,
Drew,
no.
that trail at the north end of that trail, closer to the highway, is the end of the trail in Fox Run. Fox Run has a trail. What you're looking at, the most of this picture is split rail. The north end of that trail, close to the highway, is the end of the Fox Run trail that runs behind the houses, close to the interstate. So it ends there, just ends on Everett Road. So putting in this trail would connect it into an existing trail and split rail.
How would you get back to Fox Run from Split Rail, then take
No,
to
split-
Everett?
Yeah, no, split rail, you come into split rail and there's another connection at the end of, if Brochard curves around and becomes a cul-de-sac, there is a trail that connects to split rail from Fox Run there. So you turn this basically into a loop.
Okay. I thought I was looking at Fox Run in the picture. Sorry.
Yeah. You can't see the trail because it's heavily treed, which is really, it's a nice trail. It's a daunting trail too. So, but this is minimal funding compared to other projects. So I think in future years, certainly we've got a lot going on right now, but if in future years, if we have time, I would love to see this one flexible enough to move around if you can get it done sooner, because it's an easy thing to do. But I understand that we need to push it out a little bit.
I would add that the reason it is only $60,000, it's more or less widening the shoulder and strapping it out. There is no shoulder on Everett Road in that location, but it's a flat area, but it's very narrow, and then it turns up steep into the property. So there's only so much we can do. There's probably about room for 6 or 7 feet before we're into the ditch.
When is, Mr. Mayor, when is that scheduled to be paved?
Oh, Everett Road?
That section of Everett Road?
I really don't know. It's not on a schedule right now.
Could it be possible that we could coincide those two to make that happen?
When that's done, that is something we could probably work out. Yes.
I think that's doable. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, we can include that in the resurfacing when we do that portion.
Would that cut any costs, Darrell, just because you already have the equipment out there?
Probably not, because a paving company, they would farm that out to a subcontractor and to do most of the work, all of the grading work, probably the base stone, and then they would just come in and put down binder and surface.
All right, here's my suggestion. I would leave it where it is, but and if Everett Road is due to be paved in the near future, great. If Everett Road's got another 10 years on it, I would hate to wait that long.
We'll take a look at it.
All right, thank you very much. Now we're moving on to our Parks and Recreation piece of the CIP. The first project, project 14 on your list, is the McPhee Park Phase 4 bike trails, trailhead, and parking. We've been working with a contractor that does a lot of trail work to give you the current draft of what we're looking at regarding the trails, possible trails that could go through the woods there at McPhee Park. The trails themselves are not very expensive. It's the parking that goes with them because they're all permeable paver parking that we would need to include at a trailhead, wherever that would be. In this case, we're looking at the south side of the loop road, which is currently, obviously under construction. But this gives you a little bit of an idea of what that could look like. We have got design in there with construction and some picnic tables, things like that we have to include at a trailhead. But total cost estimated for this project would be $335,000, and that is included in the FY 2022 budget, the current one we're looking at right now.
One more time, David, is that part of the 8 million that we've put back for the park as a total, or is this in addition to the 8 million?
No, sir. This would be an addition. This would be next phasing per se for the park at $335,000.
Thank you.
Dave, sorry. David, so shown on here that is not included is dog park and tennis parking option 1 or 2, correct?
Correct. We will get to those in just a minute, but this is just talking about probably what you see on your screen is the orange trails and possibly one of the 2 blue connections there to the tennis court area. And then on the south side, you see a little orange jag there that comes next to the current parking lot and the big pavilion on the south side of McPhee Park. That would be the new trailhead for this whole system, and that would include some parking for that.
Is that one of the areas with the small orange curve out there, an area that they already kind of leveled for parking?
Correct.
Future-
So that's correct. So they have already leveled all of the additional parking we will have to do and have planned for McPhee Park. The biggest thing is now we just have to go build it. So it'll be graded properly, but they'll just have to go build the actual parking with the permeable paver system.
David, what's furnishing?
Let me look and see if we have a list, unless Sue's on the line and can answer that.
We talked about doing a little pavilion there at a trailhead, which you would want to have at a trailhead like that. It's a nice place if you want to have a gathering or some kind of competition or something, then that would be an important piece, and that's in the master plan.
Thank you.
I think it looks great. David, when you look up at the north section, kind of closest to the brass lantern dead end, does that connect there, or will that connect there?
I do believe Brass Lantern has a greenway that comes out near their cul-de-sac. It actually comes off of their cul-de-sac and down to our property. So technically their greenway would connect in. Now we're not going to have a asphalt trail connected into that, but it could definitely have access to the park from up there.
Very good.
Yeah, their trail dead ends on our property, and it does come out of that cul-de-sac, and it runs right beside the property of the that great big lot that's on the end. If you look at the bottom of the cul-de-sac, right where that property line looks like a split right there for the big piece, and then the piece that's more to the east. It comes right down there along that property line, and then cuts south.
May I ask, is this a biking trail or a biking and hiking trail? And how does that work when someone's hiking and someone's biking?
You have to move over very quickly if you're the hiker so that the biker doesn't run over you. I just say that from experience at Concord Park. You're a little quicker on your feet to get out of the way. But no, this would be designed to be able to handle both and really, I think Sue could probably answer this better, but from the conversations I've had with the designer so far, you're just gonna, in those turns, the areas that it would turn sharply, you're gonna have just a little bit kind of wider area, or maybe a little bit more curve to the, or steepness or slope to the curve to keep the bike on trail rather than have it fall off the trail. This is about 1.5 miles of wooded trail. I think mostly what you're gonna see is hikers or trail runners, things like that in this area. It's a beginner type of trail. It's not an expert level or anything like that. So the terrain is relatively, it's a good terrain. It's not too steep. It's not too extreme. And that's the way we wanted to try to keep it. So I think you obviously would see some bikes, but mostly I think you're going to see walkers and hikers.
So even if you do see bikes, you probably see bikes traveling at hopefully a little bit more leisurely speed than crazy speeds. Possibly.
I don't know if we can put a speed limit on that, but yeah, you never know.
Can't put a speed limit on our roads. Why would we be able to put it on a trail?
I agree. I think the important thing, and Randy Connor, who's the trail designer for this is really not going to be anything that a very competitive mountain biker is going to want to go. This is really a beginner level, a more fun, carefree kids. That doesn't mean it's necessarily any safer for that hiker to get out of the way, but it's not going to draw people who are mountain bikers. That's not going to happen here. We just don't have the space to do that. But this is a good multi-use purpose.
Yeah, and that was kind of my hope from the beginning, is that it is a multi-purpose trail. I think there's going to be more bikers than you're saying out there. But if you go to the next level up to like Concord Park in terms of biking and speed and how difficult it is, Concord's up there, but there's just as many people not walking, but running out there as there are bikers. Then you go to downtown and you go to Baker's Creek, and the biking levels out there are extremely high, and still there's hikers and walkers everywhere. So the two marry fine, but I do think there'll be more bikers than we're thinking out there, just because it's in nature. Like, there are trails, there's trees, and there's enough people just biking on a Greenway that when they know about this, I think they'll be back there. So if you hadn't been over to like a Concord Park, it's a great walk, and then you can kind of see how people walk and bike together.
I do think that what Drew's saying about the trail runners is very true too. This is going to be very popular for the trail runners, because it's just it's beautiful back there. So I think it'll be a really important piece.
Sue, let me ask you this. When I have one last question, then I'll stop talking. When we were talking about the disc golf, how long a trail was that going to be?
Not as long as this, because there's more area that's needed for the open areas for disc golf. So I honestly don't know exactly how long that trail is, but it would be at least probably half of this, if that. So
okay. I'm just curious. Thank you.
This is Alderman Pinchuk. I'd like to interject something here at this time, talking about this money for McPhee Park. Line item 25 talks about 4 tennis courts and tennis pavilion pushed out to 2027. I have been in touch with some people that build tennis courts, and I've shared this information with Sue. But I have found somebody that can put in 2 tennis courts with lighting and fence and all for considerably less than what we're getting the 4 courts built currently, considerably less. And this is going to have to be put out for bid, but I would like to see the 2 additional tennis courts that we're looking at 4 in 2027, but I'd like to see 2 of those moved up to this year and added to that 335,000. From what I understand, we can get the 2 tennis courts complete with lights and everything for under $165,000. And that is a real bargain if we can get it. So if we can move those 2 courts up, I have no problem with the other 2 courts and the tennis pavilion being pushed out. That's $400,000 pushed out a few years, whatever. But I sure would like to add those 2 tennis courts to 335,000.
So this is Alderman Meyer. I have a question. So for the $8 million that we've already expended on McPhee Park, which is quite a bit and very, very worthwhile, and God knows I need to be walking on this trail of anybody. I'm trying to understand why all of a sudden the trailhead for a park that's basically brand spanking new is put into 2020. So somebody can answer that question for me. And then to address Alderman Pinchuk, with all due respect, I think the $8 million is getting us 4 tennis courts. Is that correct? Already? Is that right?
It's designed for 8, we're getting 4 current.
Yes, and so my understanding was way back when we talked about additional tennis courts, my understanding was with your sales experience and Drew's sales experience and the mayor's sales experience, that you all would be able to sell additional courts and it wouldn't cost us anything. So I am absolutely not in favor of an additional tennis court. We will have 4, and if the 3 of you want to put your sales expertise to work, which I think you should because I'm not a salesperson, and you can come up with the money on your own by selling it, fantastic. But as far as I'm concerned, we spent $8 million, we got 4 tennis courts.
Well, we have been pushing, at least I have been pushing to try to find somebody willing to donate the money. And with the pandemic and everything else going on as the economy, it's been difficult. And I'm not saying I'm not going to continue to try to get the money for funding for these 2 additional courts. And I hope that maybe we can, but I would like to see the money in there for the 2 tennis courts now. And if we get the funding somewhere down the road within the next 6-8 months after Merritt leaves, then we could use that money that I'm suggesting we move forward for something else. But I think it's important to get those 5th and 6th courts for the high school, so they have a place to play and practice. I think the demand for pickleball and tennis is growing. I'm a member of Cedar Bluff Racket Club. They recently put in 4 indoor tennis courts. The response has been tremendous. They are now building 6 outdoor pickleball courts. So between tennis and pickleball out there, it's exploding. And the demand is there, the need is there, and especially our high school, I feel our high school team should have a place to play and practice. So that's why I'm pushing so hard for these extra 2. And I hope that I can come up with somebody willing to fund these 2 courts. But again, so far I have not had any success. And I just, again, my opinion is I think we desperately need these 2.
And I appreciate Alderman Pinchuk's earnesty. I really do. And I appreciate your love and your passion for tennis and looking out for the high school. And I don't want to ever shut that down or make it look like it's not appropriate, because it is. And you're very earnest, and I appreciate that. As much as you're earnest about the tennis courts, I am not earnest about 2 extra tennis courts, and do not see the need to have 6 tennis courts without more data. And so I think that, and again, I know we're only supposed to look at these projects one by one, and I understand that, but I think we've got 4, and the history of our town is that we've lived within our means for years. And so as far as I'm concerned, I hate that the school doesn't have, tennis courts. I hate the school doesn't have a swimming pool. It isn't that we're going to go put a swimming pool out there in one of our parks. So I think the high school and the community can live with 4. And if some folks can go out and sell which I know you earnestly have tried, Ron, and I appreciate that. I'm not comfortable with adding any more tennis courts, especially when we looked at the Survey Monkey, whatever it was, from years ago, and tennis courts were not high up on that list. So I think 4 is a nice compromise, and I'm not comfortable adding any more. But I appreciate your earnesty. I really do. I'm just trying to be honest with y'all too. I don't see the need for additional 6 tennis courts in the town of Farragut.
Well,
Alderman Meyer, I'd like to,
Doc,
can
keep
I
in
add
mind
just a
that
little
this
to
is
this?
not just tennis, but it's pickleball as well. There's 2 sports that are in demand for these courts. And like I say, pickleball is growing tremendously, and these courts are going to be lined for both. And so,
I hear you. And the 4 courts
Okay,
that we
can I,
have paid $8
okay,
million
you guys have,
for have pickleball.
I'd love
on
to
it,
have
right?
a say here.
Okay.
I want to support what Alderman Meyer is saying. I would like to see a fundraising effort. We have supplied 4 quality courts. We have a pavilion and restrooms, an area for them to get themselves established. If the pickleball and tennis playing folks are really want to see 2 more courts, I'd love to see a fundraising effort to provide for those 2 more courts. I am not supportive of funding them this year. As Alderman Meyer stated, we have Grigsby Chapel that we still have yet to talk about, and that's pushed out to 2024. And I'd like to see something happen with that sooner than later, and that's $270,000. So I agree with Alderman Meyer's position. We've invested $8 million in McPhee Park, and we're looking at putting in bike trails now for $335. You say that we can get tennis courts for $165. Start a fundraising effort. Ask them to pony up a little bit of their time and money. I know the baseball parents have fundraised over the years, and so have the football parents have fundraised over the years for equipment and such. So I think there's an opportunity there that we really need to explore.
And getting back to my
All right,
second question, one more, so I just, because we're talking about the bike trails, I'm trying to get my head around this. The item number 14, is that supposed to be partially funded by another entity? Is that why we're putting bike trails in a brand new park?
I know
Okay,
that yes, I know that Alderman Pinchak had been working closely with a local business to provide the trail funding for the trail. The issue becomes you need parking for a trailhead, and that's where the cost gets high. The trail itself, again, is probably $50,000 or less. It's the parking that goes with it.
So can I get some kind of explanation of what this deal is? Or like I don't understand the whole thing. I don't know. And maybe I missed it. Maybe there was an email went out. I don't know who this entity is. And if somebody can enlighten me, that'd be great, because I'm assuming the reason we're putting the $335,000 into fiscal year 22, which to me means it's pretty emergent, is because we're going to lose, I guess, this money coming in from this other group, I guess, if we don't do it now. And I'm just trying to understand.
This is, Alderman Meyer, this is simply for y'all to see if this is your priorities for this project to be next year. We do have an entity that has talked to us about providing up to, $25,000 to $50,000 for funding. If that's enough to move forward with the project in the board's mind, then we can do that. If it's not, then we can certainly move this project out. It's just a matter of what your priorities are for the whole park, really.
So make sure I understand this. So this entity is going to kick in 25 grand, and then we're going to kick in another 335,000 on top of that. In 2020, what these numbers tell me. I'm just trying to ask. I'm not being snarky. I just need.
Scott,
I don't know
this Alderman
Pinchak.
Scott, this is Alderman Pinchak. I have talked to several people, and somebody's willing to donate money specifically for a trail. And originally they were talking 25,000. They have asked corporate for 50,000, and that's what we're waiting on is a response from corporate headquarters to approve the $50,000.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
So the rest of it is, most of the bulk of this, the cost of this is the trailhead with pavilion and the lighted parking. Is that correct?
Truly, the bulk of the cost is the parking. All of our parking out there is permeable paver parking, and it's going to go all the way around the loop road for the most part, all the way around the loop road. And so what you're talking about is an area large enough, because this again would be popular, that you'd have enough people that could park a car there, get out, hit the trailhead, go do a loop or two, and then come back. So that's what the purpose of that is. And it would go toward the future connections of the rest of the parking in the park.
Let me ask you this. Was this originally planned to have a parking in this area? As part of the
I'll let
original
Sue
plan?
answer that, but I believe so. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so as David said, there's parking there are different parking lots all around the loop road. So yes, we're just talking about 30 spaces, and this construction would also include design, because that part has not been designed. So that's one of the issues about this park, is that we are probably going to be fairly quickly having a parking issue for certain things. And so parking is going to become, very important. And as you add amenities, it becomes even more important. So there are several ways to do this. As David and I talked this morning, we could do all the parking at one big swoop. It would cost a fair amount, but then it'd be done and you get a better deal in the end, and then add your amenities. So there are different ways to do it, but you have to realize you have a 50-acre park, and parking is going to be premium there. So
I just thought that, Sue, this is Scott, and I promise I'm not trying to be snarky. I'm just trying to get my head around this. I thought that we would have had a design that would have allowed for all this parking. And I guess I have to make a comment, 25,000. So I think what I hear you all asking me to approve, which I'm having a hard time approving, is that we're going to spend 13 times the amount of some contribution from some company to get trails in a park that we just spent $8 million on. And I can't support that. And I won't support it unless there's some pretty strong data.
So the master,
yeah. I hear it's a part of the master plan, Sue.
Yeah, so the master, that has the parking for, whatever the build out of the rest of the park is. Since we did the master plan, the build out of the park has changed. There is actually pretty much nothing that's the same except for the layout of the parking for the rest of the park from the master plan. We've moved the dog park back, we've moved the amphitheater out, we've put in these trails instead of disc golf, we've taken away a playground because we don't need it. So a lot of things have happened. But when you have a 50-acre park and a great lawn and all those things, yes, you will eventually need more parking. It's just going to be part of it.
So the $335,000, one more time, this is for parking.
Yeah, well, part of it is for the actual construction of the trails and the design of the trails. But yes, a lot of the cost here is for parking. Again, you could choose not to do it. You could choose just to build the trail and do the trailhead up to where the sidewalk is, and we could see what happens there. I mean, that's an option too. We just know eventually that the parking is going to be a problem, and here's what happens. It's your neighborhoods that are going to get parked in, and they're not going to be happy. So, and we know that because we've had a couple events out there that's already happened at. So those are the things to just think about.
This is Alderman Pinchot. Scott, I want to make sure that you understand something. When this master plan was devised and we came up with a cost estimate for this park in the last couple of years, we were looking at $14-15 million to do this project. We didn't have 14-15. It was hard to get the 8 million. But this is a phase. It's like Campbell Station. We just finished phase 3. Now we're looking at trying to finish the inside of the building and so forth. So $8 million got the grading and got the road cut in and got the tennis court. There's still an awful lot we had on the master plan that we wanted to do with this park. We need another $4 or $5 million to get everything done that we want. So we're slowly picking away at this thing, but you know, we're going to get there someday. But it's not like the $8 million was supposed to be the completion of the park.
I understand. I think I mean, I don't really care, honestly, what the cost was before I was on BOMA. It's irrelevant to me. $8 million is a lot of money for a park, especially with a town that doesn't have a city property tax, that has stormwater issues that we'll probably end up dealing with tonight. We have a death trap, and y'all at the paper can quote me on that. Grigsby Chapel is a death trap waiting to happen. And we're sitting here talking about trailheads, and we're sitting here talking about this because some entity is going to give us 25 grand, and we're going to spend 13,000 or 13 times that amount for trails. Table it. I'm not interested in talking about this until we get to the streets.
This Alderman Burnett, I'm in full support of this. It's going to serve our community for decades to come. That parking is going to be needed from day one. And when the trailhead goes in, if it goes forward, it'll be even more needed, but it'll also serve the west end of the Great Lawn as well. So I think this is fantastic, and I'm super excited about it.
Any other aldermen have any comments about this particular item?
I have to say that I'm struggling with the cost of it, with the other stuff that we're trying to work on after. Alderman Meyer makes a good point about, we did spend $8 million and it took a lot to get to that point. And now we're just continuing to add to that pot of money. And I thought when we did the $8 million, we would kind of back away from additional phases, kind of push them out a little bit so we could get to other projects that have been waiting for some time and needing to be addressed. So I'm concerned about the timing. I don't mind the trail. I understand the parking issue. I would love to see that we know there's a parking issue before we're investing in a parking lot, if that's the bulk of the cost here. If the trails aren't going to be costly to put in, but I'm struggling.
This is Alderman Pinchuk. I am in favor of the $335,000 in this fiscal year.
Mayor,
All right, thank you all. Sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
I said I'm in favor. The parking is something that whenever we first started talking about this a number of years ago, we knew the parking was going to eat us alive. As we put more parking in, we did not put very much in to begin with because of the cost of it, because it is permeable pavers and you couldn't ask for anything more expensive. But as we add, then we have to add parking. That's just a natural thing. Eventually we'll get to the discussion one of these days on the dog park. You know, you hope that just like Alderman Pinchuk come up with a reduced cost on putting tennis courts and lights in, that makes it more sellable. Whenever we go after a grant or some help on the dog park, you know, we'll be out of this construction phase here. And as we come out of this one was a killer. As we come out of this one, then we can really compartmentalize the other things that we do, but we're going to always have to add parking because we're woefully underparked right now. For a 52-acre park, we're woefully underparked. And we know that as we add parking, it's permeable pavers, and this is not cheap. So as far as this project right here, I think it's going to be well received with our group. If the mindset is not to do anything else except for Grigsby Chapel Road, then we need to stop what we're doing right now and switch to Grigsby Chapel Road and get it over with.
Because well, maybe that's what we should do. I don't know. I mean, I didn't organize this workshop. All I'm saying is, I mean, I think that we could throw the town a bone and start the trails in fiscal year 23, especially when I hear the staff talking about there's only so much they can do. Okay, there's only so much they can do. It's a brand new park. I can't help that we don't have enough parking. This is the first I've heard about this. And this is not the place to inform me all of a sudden, there's $8 million park and we don't have enough parking. That is absolutely new news to me. I don't appreciate hearing it in a workshop.
Well, I mean, Scott, the fact that we didn't have, the parking situation's been right there at the front.
Pardon me?
It's always been there. The parking situation has always been there.
And I support parking. Absolutely. And I'm excited. I think McPhee Park is going to be a beautiful park. But we have to set priorities. And I don't see why, because some entity might give us $25,000, we have to do trails in fiscal year 22.
For the sake of time, we've already all given our thoughts on this. Can we keep moving? I mean, we're not even halfway.
We'll probably have that part too, because I'm done.
Alderman Meyer, I can't hear you very well. Your
So maybe
volume.
we need to go to part 2 because I thought this was set at 7 o'clock. Or are we going
Is
all night?
anyone else having problems with Alderman Meyer?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
you're-
Alderman Meyer,
Your connection is bad.
Try it again, Scott.
Let me go kick some teenagers off of my Wi-Fi. Okay, all right.
That's a little bit better.
So I have too many teenagers in my house using my Wi-Fi. That's the problem.
well, maybe I can help us move on to, if the board's okay, move on to item or project number 15. And that'll give Alderman Meyer a chance to work on his Wi-Fi there. But Alderman, the project number 15 is restrooms at the town center area. We've been in discussions with the developer as he's working on his site plan work to bring to the planning commission. We know we're going to need the town green space there is a public space. We know we're going to need restrooms, public restrooms. It would be much better to have that coordinated with the development of the project rather than have it piecemeal brought in later on and after the fact. So this is a line item for $300,000 for the construction of restrooms there on the town green in that area. And it's in the FY 2022 budget because of the construction timeframe of the project.
David,
That was my question.
I'm
I was
sorry.
wondering when construction was going to be started, and should this be possibly pushed to 2023? That's all I was wondering.
Great question, Alderman. Obviously he still has to go through the site plan process with the planning commission. This project will probably be phased in. I'm just not sure exactly what phase would be coming first, second, or third, whenever those number of phases are. So we just wanted to have the money allocated in case it needed to be sooner rather than later.
I can give you some numbers, at least his numbers from when he shared with the MPC, his phasing dates. He's looking at, let's see, grocery retail building completion by 11/21, infrastructure and site work completion for the multifamily by 4/22, multifamily clubhouse buildings completion 5/22, retail buildings completion 9/22. So he's looking at September. Let's see, hold on. No, I've got one more page. Multifamily building completion. I guess that he's got more completion dates. All open space and landscaping features complete by 6/23. So I don't have clarity from his build out dates. Hold on a minute. Well, he's talking about having his fields done, the community field done in phase 2. So phase 2 should be finished by September of 22 is what he's projecting.
That's why I was thinking this should be pushed to 23, because that would be the 22-23 fiscal year.
Well, the trails will be done. I don't know when the trails will be done. But
I think sorry, Alderman.
I would think that I'm sorry, go ahead, David.
I was just going to mention that the roadway system is going to be one of the things he has to do first. And within that roadway system is this town green area. So when that area and the building, the larger retail center that's there, I know will be some of the first things built. And this is kind of the area that we're talking about putting the restroom facilities in. So because of that, I do think it would be, if we could push it out to 2023, I think that'd be great. I would need to contact the developer a little bit and discuss that with him. But we just wanted to have money allocated for that whenever that was needed.
I would feel comfortable, David, if you spoke with Bud, but I think that you're going to need them in 2022. That's the first. You're correct that road system needs to be done first. That main field's going to be done relatively quickly, and I'm sure that people are going to want to be using that, and we'll need public restrooms. And I would hate to not have them when we start having events on that town center, because that could be not pretty.
Did you say that the, what was the date, or David, on which would be the grocery store?
The grocery store is November 21.
That's when they're going to have that done. Well, they'll be putting the sanitary sewer system into those buildings probably at that time then, or some time right prior to that. That would be the optimum time to go ahead and at least stub it up if we didn't have it built, but at least stub it in to where we would have it there.
Yeah, and for that you would need a plan and a design and
Yep.
understand what you're looking at. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments about the restroom facilities for the town center? If not, we can move on to project 16, which is the
David,
field yes,
really
ma'am, go ahead.
quickly, do you guys know what general location you're thinking of placing them? Are you going to work with Bud on that one?
No, ma'am. Yes, we're going to be working with Mr. Cullum to try to figure out the best location for that. It needs to be really close to that town green area.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to figure out which corner, which area would best fit.
Well, I will, from a perspective of somebody who might use the trails, I'm just kind of given that as extra added. You might need it closer to the trails, the side of the development where the trails are, so that it can kind of kill two birds with one stone, I guess. So
You're more
just my
on the east side, Louis.
Yeah. Just a suggestion that if you talk
Sure.
to the developer about that, you bring that up. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, again, on project 16, this is a reconstruction of field. Actually, this is the reconstruction of taking the east baseball field and making it into a rectangular field with turf, and then taking the west baseball field and actually extending the fencing of that field to make it a full-size large field, and then redoing the surfacing of that field as well. Both those projects combined at the same time would be about 1.382 million, and we have that project scheduled out for design next year, but then construction in FY 2023.
This is Alderman Burnett. I definitely like the idea. I think we'll get 10 times the usage converting that field, as well as making the other baseball field more usable. Is there yeah, so I am supportive of where it's at in the budget, but Sue, is there a grant possibility that we could look at for the next 2 years for this field conversion?
So yes, my idea on this is that we have this in the budget because I believe that the local Parks and Recreation Fund grant we will get notice about it for 2022 later this year, and generally, if they follow the same format, that grant application will be due in March or the spring of 22. one of the things about this is that you do have to have any project that you apply for a grant for in your CIP. It doesn't have to be for that year, but you have to prove that you have plans to do it, and this is not something on a back shelf somewhere. That said, we generally hear whether we've been approved for a grant sometime in the fall, September, August, September, October area. And my thought is if that would happen, that we would move forward on doing the design at that point, getting the design ready. It takes generally about 6 months, 5 to 6 months to get the contract from the state to move forward after environmentals and everything. So this would stage it all. And again, you know, sort of like Anchor Park, you guys sort of said, we want to do this, but we may not want to do it if we don't get a grant. This would stage it in that way so you could see if you wanted to move forward or not after you heard about the grant. This makes a good grant application. It's probably the best project we have for a grant application.
Okay, thank you, Sue. I support it.
This is Alderman Pinchuk, I support it.
Mayor Williams, I support it.
Alderman Meyer, I support it. Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound very lovely.
I kicked every teenager in my house off the freaking Wi-Fi. Sorry.
You're very crisp. Hear you great.
Okay. All right, with that, thank you for that feedback. We're going to move on to project 17 now, which is an amphitheater for the town center. We know that, again, we're talking about the green space at the town center, and this is a picture, not to say this is what we're going to do, but just to say this is the concept is an amphitheater. We have that scheduled out in FY 2023, 2 years out, when the center would be fully built out and be able to start utilizing the space fully. We have an estimated cost of $175,000 to put an amphitheater or some type of space like this in that green, in the town center green area at the Biddle project. So that is what this project is, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions or see comments from the board.
It's Alderman Burnett. I'm good with it where it's at. The only thing I say is I want the thing up and running and then be able to decide what would fit well there. So as long as it's not next year, I'm good to talk about it in the coming years.
That's why
agree.
it's there. Correct.
Yeah, I agree with Alderman Burnett. I want us to certainly proceed cautiously. Would like to know that we've had several events under our belt and a lot of community has had an experience with it, so that we can get adequate input about how to use it and what we'd like to see, what we'd like to see from an amphitheater. So yes, keeping it out until we know what we want to do is a good idea.
Mayor Williams agreed.
Alderman Pinchuk, agree.
Alderman Meyer, agree.
All right, thank you. Moving on to project 18 is the Mayor Bob Leonard Park Boardwalk Overlook replacement. This has been in place for a number of years. It is getting to its useful life, and this is just a matter of replacing the boards and the. We did a similar project just recently on the south side of the Greenway or the Boardwalk area. They're near the parking lot of Mayor Bob. So this would be replacing all the boards and for that for $50,000. And that is in the FY 2023 budget as well, 2 years out.
The current work I saw recently looks really good, and I'm all for this.
Alderman
Mayor
Burnett, I'm
Williams,
good.
Have we, just for curiosity, have we ever priced this out with Trex? I know that Trex has its own issues and can get really hot if you don't get it right, but have we ever, I don't know if that's triple the cost or even if we care. Does Sue have a comment about that?
That's really actually more of a Bud question. We have Trex for the fishing piers at
Okay,
Mrs.
just curious.
Pavlin,
the Trex would be triple the price for the decking.
And what's their lifespan? Because this looks like, I don't have
This
anything to
trail-
go off of. Go ahead.
This trail here is 25 years old, same as that one that we just did along the parking lot. And the wood lasted for 25 years. I'm not going to guarantee the new wood with the new treating process will last 25 years. Trex has been known to last a long time. There are a few maintenance issues with it, that it has to be, sometimes cleaned. It gets slick, but so does the wood sometimes. So.
All right, I'm just curious. I don't think that we need to expend 3 times the money for that. So appreciate it.
All right, we'll move on to project 19, which is the Town Hall Playground Restroom. We have the Blue Cross Blue Shield donation for the restroom, or for the all-inclusive playground behind Town Hall. We know that in a couple years, or after this gets open, we're going to need to have some kind of facility there for those that are on the weekends, or even after Town Hall's closed and can't use our facilities. So this is $170,000 in the FY 2023 budget, again, 2 years out, to put some basic restroom facilities at the out here behind Town Hall. So if you have any questions on that, we're happy to try to answer those too.
The only thing I'll add, David, is, there's a big part of me that says it needs to be done as soon as the park's open, right? Because when you have the availability to the different levels of kids that will be out there, actually walking across that parking lot or rolling across that parking lot is a lot further than you think. So I don't know if we can do it in the beginning of 23, or if there's something we could do in FY 22 that could make that so we could have the restroom very early on, but knowing that this park is coming quickly, we need to have something available very close, given the nature of who will be using this park a lot. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes. And I think Sue was looking at possibly a prefab type of unit that would be a lot, hopefully easier to be able to, and quicker to put in. But we haven't decided that yet, but I can certainly get with Sue. We can talk about it offline and try to determine a good timeline for that.
Okay.
I don't disagree with Alderman Burnett's assessment. It's the price tag that's killing me. So that's the painful part.
I don't like any restroom price tags. They all seem to be very expensive, no doubt.
It's expensive.
All right, we can move on to project 20, and that is McPhee Park Phase 5. This was actually adding, we're going to go back to the similar map we saw a second ago, but this is adding the dog park to the facility, along with associated parking and fencing for the park. Estimated cost for this is $772,000, and again, this is not until the 2024 budget, so 3 years out, looking at that at the current time.
This is Alderman Burnett. I'm good with it where it stands, and then hope that we can look for some grants or donations that could make it happen sooner.
Alderman Hitchcock, I agree with Alderman Burnett.
Mayor Williams, same, and add cheaper. Hopefully, we can get a little cheaper.
I know that this has been something that the residents have been asking for a very long time. My question is, and I hate to dig back into this, is where's the parking for this? Will we be including more parking for this, the dog park as well?
Yes, ma'am. Part of this construction cost is parking, adding parking
Okay.
for that area.
I
That's right.
see that, 80 spaces. Helps if I read that right. So is that going to be in that green area? There will be a parking lot in that, wherever the proposed dog park is?
Yes, ma'am. You can kind of see the outline of where the road is currently going to be coming through on this picture before you. So it'd just be just outside of that area is where that parking area would be, and it hugs the road. It's not a large parking lot. It's basically a 2-lane or a side-by-side parking all the way around the park. So that will add us like you have there before you 80 spaces, and it'll be adjacent to the park with a opening to get into the park and then be fenced for the dogs.
Thank you.
Is Daryl still here on the call?
Yes, I am.
I've got a question for you that maybe I'm the only one that's curious, but have we ever figured what a parking space is per parking space with permeable pavers?
I don't know that offhand, but I'm sure we can find you a number.
Because earlier David said we could actually do the whole thing at one time or do it piecemeal as we had projects. So my curiosity is how much is a parking spot per, in other words, whenever we say we're going to put 80 in or 10 in or 12 in or whatever, the costume of the parking spot with permeable pavers, and with the understanding, I know that it's already been graded. It just has to be installed.
Well, obviously the price per square foot would decrease the more that we're doing, to a point anyway. How many spaces are we talking about?
Carol, this section would be 80 spaces. But I think the mayor was asking about how much one space may cost just on average if everything is graded. So it's something I'm sure we can get back with the board on and get you a firmer number rather than guessing tonight.
I think 80 spaces is big enough to call it a big job. So you should be able to get a pretty good price per square foot.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on phase 5 or at least project number 20 that is on our list tonight? If not, we'll move on to project 21, and that is turf replacement for field 2. This is the first field that we turfed, I think back in 2011 or 12, can't remember exactly. So it's definitely going to be getting to its useful life. We've got it projected out to replace the turf in 2024 at an estimated cost of $625,000.
This is Alderman Burnett. I'm good where it's at in the budget, and that field has gotten a lot of use.
Alderman Pinchuk, I agree.
Mayor Williams, I agree.
I'm fine.
Alderman Meyer agreed.
And I'll just make this point too, as we get closer to the year that we're gonna look at doing the project, Sue always evaluates it to determine, can we get another year out of it or do we really need to replace it? So this is a time when we think we'll need to do it in 3 years. But when we get closer, we'll definitely know for sure if we can push it out or not. All right, we've got project number 22, which is Anchor Park fencing. Again, this is all the fencing that goes around the park as well as the outfield fencing for the baseball field at Anchor. I think it's all been out there since the inception of the park several years ago. So this is $150,000 to replace that fencing in FY 2024.
Mayor Williams, I'm good with where it's at.
Alderman Burnett, I'm good where it's at.
Alderman Pinchuk, I'm fine.
Alderman Pavlin, I'm fine.
Alderman Meyer, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. And we've got project number 23, which is Anchor Park ADA or basketball resurfacing and ADA access. This is an existing basketball court that we have. It's just an asphalt parking lot. If you went out there today, you'd notice some things that probably aren't compliant with some of the new rules and regs that we have. So this is another project that when we resurface it someday, we'll need to get the ADA components up to speed. And so this one is projected at $40,000 cost and to be done in FY 2024.
Mayor Williams, I'm fine with the location.
Alderman Burnett, I'm good with it as well.
Alderman Pinchuk, I'm fine with it as well.
This is Vice Mayor Pavlin. I'm fine with it, but I know that my son plays on that court, and he tells me that that's really in bad shape. And every time the ball goes afoul, it goes down a hill. So it does need to be addressed. And certainly, if we have the opportunity, I'd love to see it done sooner than later. But certainly, it's not an urgent issue.
Alderman Meyer, I'm fine with it.
All right, that sounds good. Project 24 is the Anchor Park Playground Parking and Access. Anchor Park's playground has been there quite a few years. What we'd be doing is replacing the playground, actually moving it to a flatter part that would be easier for ADA access, and then probably regrassing the current area that this park or this playground is in. Again, that's not projected until 2025 at $250,000 for that whole project.
This Alderman Pinchuk, I've been here having a lot of, both the Alderman Pinchuk here. I've been having a lot of comments over the last 2-3 years about this playground area. So I just wondered, one, if we could move it up sooner, and two, Sue, this is the park where I've had quite a few kids suggesting that we put in one of those ping pong tables that you and I have discussed that is pretty durable and has a built-in type net and so forth. So I've had a lot of concern over updating this and would like to see it moved up.
This is Alderman Meyer. I'm fine with you moving it up as long as you don't put it in fiscal year 22.
Mayor Williams, I'm fine as well. I've not heard any negative on this, but I guess grandchildren would be the ones that would complain. So I have no feedback whatsoever.
I have a question, Sue. I would assume park playground equipment has a lifespan of its own. And the sooner we replace it, the sooner we're replacing it again. Is that, was that the reasoning for where we put it in the budget, or just curious?
Yes, playgrounds do have lifespans. This one is this is actually our oldest playground, and it's held up surprisingly well. The challenge here is not just replacing it where it is, but actually moving it, which is the better challenge than trying to make this location an ADA accessible location, because it doesn't meet anything. And this is not just this part of it, but also the swings part of it and everything. And we feel like if we put it up in the middle of the upper circle, that we could do it. One of the questions or comments that we get a lot is parents would like to have a fenced in playground, which I do understand, and they would also like some shade over part of it. So that's why it's got a pretty hefty price tag to it. Plus this would have to be demolished. But as far as Alderman Pinchuk's, we could definitely put one of the permanent ping pong tables at the end of this. There's plenty of room. This would not be a huge playground, so.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Any other comments from the board on this project?
Are we looking to move it up or not?
Alderman, I think, again, if you want to move it up, we may be able to look at moving it up a year. As Sue stated, we look at kind of a useful life of these things to see how long they can last and try to maximize that if possible. But if it's something you all would want to move up earlier than 2025, we would be happy to look at that and put it in the budget.
I'd like to see it in 23 if possible.
This is Alderman Meyer. I'm not comfortable with this kind of capital outlay before a useful life is up. I find that irresponsible. So I'm not comfortable with, if the useful life is up in 23, then great. If it's not up to 25, it needs to stay in 25 or 27.
Well, Sue did say it was the oldest playground, oldest park, so
I understand. I hear you. Whatever the useful life is, I'm open to it. Sue, do you happen to know off the top of your head what the useful life is of the playground? They
Well,
didn't have that on the CPA exam.
yeah. So generally, I mean, it's give or take 8 to 10 years. It depends on the surface. Usually the surface is the biggest problem. This is not, this is a mulch surface, so it's not as bad. It just depends on the wear and tear and a lot of other items. So it's really hard to say. And like everything else, we sort of look at it every year and say, yeah, it's getting to the point where it's just it's costing more to fix it and make sure that it's safe than it is then it's time to replace it. So it could probably be definitely moved up a year if you wanted to do that. That would probably be not a bad idea, but again, it's all up to you and how you want to fund everything.
And is more corrupt the ADA part of it. I'm not Scott. I'd like to let it run its course for as long as we can, but what would change as far as it Sue, as far as the ADA portion of this particular playground right here?
Okay, so this playground would actually go away, and if you're familiar with Anchor Park, there is a piece of the park that's in the middle of the trail that's a big open, basically oval. It's where the memorial for the Stout Memorial is. It's as you pull into the main parking lot to your right. That's where I would propose to move the playground, because there is no other place that's going to be easily accessible. Doesn't mean that this couldn't be done here to make this accessible. It's just that you would chew up a whole lot of money making that happen, where when you have it on the top level there, it's going to be a lot easier, because that's fairly flat there. So that would make it a lot easier to get done.
If it was up near the road, like you're talking about, would it need a fence as well?
It would be closer to the road, and that's, yeah, and we hear that a lot. People, a lot of parents want a fence no matter where it is. And so, a lot of people don't necessarily want to watch what their kids every single second. So if we could add a fence, and then the other thing that I hear, oh, that's great. See that big circle area right there? So if we could add that, but the bigger thing, even more, even more than the fencing is some shade, because, we've all heard from people that they want shade over at least part of the playground. Our summers are very hot. It's just a pretty expensive thing, and it's really hard to do on the back end. So since we've heard it over and over, it would be really nice to at least have one of our playgrounds that we could have some sun sails over it. Wouldn't shade the whole thing probably, but to have some sails over it would be helpful. Again, this is not a huge playground. It's not big where it is right now, so.
Okay, thank you.
I'm comfortable with moving it to 2024 in the idea that when we get closer to funding for that, Sue will have a good understanding of, does it have another year, or do we need to take care of it?
And one of the other things to remember is that, if the grants sort of fall like they've been falling every 2 years, there'll be another round in 24. So this would be a great grant at that point, for I think a very viable grant for that. So that might be a possibility too.
Alderman Pinchuk, is that kind of cuts it in half? You comfortable with that?
I am, and if Sue can get the grant, we can move it up a year, even down the road. But putting it in 24 helps, so I'm fine with that.
All right, thank you all for the feedback.
I can live with it.
Sorry, Alderman Meyer.
I was say I can live with it in 26. I'm sorry, you said 24, right, Louise?
24
Okay.
for a look-see.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, moving on to project 25. This is McPhee Park Phase 6. We kind of talked about this already. Would be adding 4 tennis courts, which is the rest of the facility, tennis pavilion and restroom facility, which we did not add as part of the current project out at McPhee. This again would be in FY 2027, I believe. Got that correct? And it would be for projected cost of $565,000.
This is Alderman Pinchuk. We have very little in the fiscal year 2026, so I'd at least move it up 1 year.
I don't have a problem with that. I would love to see us get the community engaged with some fundraising. Put it out there so that they see that there's interest. But if they want it sooner, let's do some fundraising. We have an opportunity here. We've got engaged residents, and if you're talking about $160,000 for fundraising, that there's a potential that they could come up with that. I would like to see that effort made, get the community involved. And it's also a fundraising for them. They understand, it brings our community together for an effort.
I agree. That's something that we were planning on doing. I was trying to approach individuals and businesses first, but fundraising is definitely something we're considering.
Alderman Burnett, I'm good with it.
Mayor Williams, I'm good with it as well. The fundraising, that is.
Okay.
Alderman Meyer, I'm good with the fundraising.
Okay, thank you. Project 26 is the Mayor Bob Leonard Park Field 1 turf replacement. We just talked about Field 2. This would be a very similar process for Field 1, which is closest to Harrison Road. Again, it's getting out to that useful life of the road, and of the turf. And it just depends on the wear and tear of the turf at that time. So, of course, in 5-6 years, we'll be looking at that a lot closer to figure out if we can move it out or if it needs to be moved up, frankly. But right now, we've got it in FY 2027 at $625,000 for turf replacement.
Mayor Williams, I'm fine with it.
Alderman Burnett, I'm good with it.
Alderman Pinchuk, I'm fine.
Alderman
Mayor
Meyer, I'm
Fowler,
fine. Alderman Meyer, I'm fine.
All right, great. Now we're going to move on to our engineering projects. The first engineering project we have tonight is the stormwater improvements. These are the physical repairs and improvements to the stormwater system. I think the board knows we're doing quite a few. We're about to start quite a few here in the next month or so, all around town. What this would do is allocate $200,000 a year toward improvements that we see that do come up that we need to take under control. We also have the next item on your list of CIP projects is to do a master plan for the entire town over the next 4 years. These kind of go hand in hand. The master plan would be $250,000 a year for the next 4 years to map and review and study each of our stormwater systems in all of our town. That way we have a complete overview of everything that we have in the ground, the current physical structure of it. We can create a priority list on what those structures need to be replaced or repaired first, second, on down the road, and then come up with a funding plan for that. So the $200,000 is going to be helpful to put away, and as we have projects come up, we will save that money in the CIP for stormwater. So we may have more projects come up 1 year than others, but overall, those are the next 2 items. So that's going to be items 27 and 28, kind of talking about stormwater all at once, regarding what the plan is for the next 4 to 6 years on that. So if there's any questions, comments, concerns, obviously let us know.
Mayor Williams, no questions.
Alderman Burnett, no questions.
Alderman Pinchuk, no questions.
David, I have a quick question. Obviously, we're putting in $200,000 From year to year, we may find that we're going to have more. So obviously, we'll be pulling from CIP funds or general fund if there's any issues beyond what the $200,000 can pay for. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am. I would equate it to similar what we do with land acquisition or what we were doing with Greenway connectors. You know, for years, we put money aside for Greenway connectors. And frankly, the board has come up with a longer list of priorities than we had monies for in that account. So we have just kind of gotten away from the Greenway connectors account and gone straight to funding them in the budget. So if there was something that we found was a major project that we needed to do that was over the money that we had, then we would just allocate it from CIP reserves or even general fund reserves in the CIP.
And let me ask you this also. It says right here, you go across fiscal year 2022 to 2027, $200,000 each year totals to 1.2 million. But that doesn't account for the money we have in the account right now, does it?
No, ma'am, it does not. We budgeted 750,000 in this year's budget to do many of the projects that we're taking over right now.
Yep.
I'm trying to see what right now we have 562,000 left over in that stormwater account.
Yep.
And we'll be using the bulk of that with this project coming up.
Okay. All right. Does that 500 and whatever, 62, whatever it was, that includes the money that FEMA provided back to us from the 2017, 2017-18 storm, whenever that was?
I'm going to assume so. Allison, is that correct?
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on stormwater plan?
I'm just going to say this. I really, truly appreciate what you guys have put together here. I know that we've been working on this for some time, trying to figure out the best way forward. And we couldn't quite figure out what we were supposed to put first. So I feel like we're on a really good path to shoring up our knowledge of our stormwater infrastructure and setting future boards up for success in managing and maintaining our stormwater infrastructure. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, next project is Virtue Road Phase 2. And this is going from the Harville property, or what Brookmere is now, down to Turkey Creek, past Turkey Creek Road, all the way to Boyd Station Road, actually. This project right now is partially funded from the TPO for the FY 2022 and 2023 years. It is not funded for 2024 and 2025. That would be the right-of-way acquisition and the construction. What we would assume is that if TPO does fund it at the 80-20 split, that would move forward on the list as it normally would. However, if TPO does not fund this project, then it would just, the right-of-way and construction aspects of it, we would push out until we could get TPO funding. Again, we're looking at a total of 6.9 million for this project, and you can see the breakdown there between TPO and the town portion to finish that out.
Hey, Daryl, when did we get funding for this? Why don't I remember this?
We got that when when the TPO assembled the last transportation improvement program.
Kudos to you. I did not realize. Typically, when you get the design and the NEPA phases funded, it typically means that they're interested in or leaning towards funding the rest of the project. Is that not correct?
I quietly call it getting my foot in the door. Yes.
Okay. I like that. Okay, good. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Considering how long it normally takes to develop a project through the local programs development office, these things typically will stretch out over a couple of TIPs.
So we'll be looking at maybe funding in 2030. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
It'll be before that.
Yeah. We think maybe end of construction will be in 2030.
hopefully before that. I'm hopefully we can just roll this into the next TIP and it will be funded. We'll just move forward.
I'm just teasing you,
fault.
Daryl. It's not
I
your
know.
fault.
I
TPO
know.
likes to, and the feds in the state and everybody likes to drag their feet on these projects that we'd like to see finished quicker, sooner than later.
Well, it takes a while to develop.
Any other questions or comments from Aldermen on Virtue Road Phase 2 project? If not, we can move on to Union Road improvements. This is the construction phase. We have been working for a while, as everyone knows, on the right-of-way and the design and NEPA and everything else we've had to work through with the TPO and TDOT. So this is actual construction dollars to do the improvements. Again, this is an 80-20 split with the TPO. And you can see the town's portion there is $704,000 in the FY 2022 budget.
Do we really think that this is is this realistic? I'm going to ask, or I'm going to pray. Is this realistic that we'll get this done by July of 23?
It is realistically possible.
Okay.
No, right-of-way, considering that so much right-of-way is being donated along the frontage of the Ivy Farms developments, that's taking out several tracks that we would have had to deal with. I think surely we can, once we can turn in right-of-way plans, get them approved, we should be able to acquire right-of-way and easements within 9 months or so, 9 or 10 months. So,
So
I can see how we could spend most of a good bit of the next fiscal year just buying right of way.
Right. Yeah.
But we want to be able to roll straight into construction rather than having to wait another 3 or 4 months on another fiscal year to come up.
That would be wonderful. I guess you guys resolved whatever issues you were having with the frontage on the Ivy Farms now that they have individual lots, and you were able to deal with that.
Kimley Horn is working on marrying what has been built with their plans right now. They did run into a small vertical bust they're working out, and it's taken a little bit of time, a little more time than I wanted. But yes, they're working on it.
Okay,
We
thank
should be
you.
able to. We should be able to have the transaction made surely in the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you, Daryl. I appreciate the update.
All right, and any other questions on that, we can have those. But if not, we're going to move on to Project 31, and this is Kingston Pike Corridor Study for Pedestrian Enhancements. Daryl has been talking to TPO about, or the Knox planning staff about getting a grant possibility for this project. And this is going to be looking at pedestrian activity from Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road all the way down to Linden Welch Way and frankly, maybe even all the way down to Concord Road intersection with Kingston Pike. So this will be a study to do in this next year. Again, this is 85% funded through TPO and 15% would come from the town. So any questions, we'll be happy to try to answer them on this. And this is scheduled for next year's budget.
Alderman Burnett, no questions. I'm definitely for it.
Mayor Williams, no questions. I'm for it as well.
Alderman Pinchot, I'm for it.
Daryl, quickly, I know it's a TPO study. Is it tied directly to Kingston Pike, or is it in that entire area? Like, for example, you come out of Municipal Center Drive, you come to the light, and you make a left. Right before you get to the old Aubrey's property, that I think that's TDOT property, or is that's state property? I'm wondering if a trail can be put through there with a bridge over the creek and connect into the new Kroger Trail. Is that something that is possible to design with this grant, or does it have to be along Kingston Pike?
It wouldn't be part of this grant. This this will be looking at pedestrian enhancements, but it won't be designed. They won't be designing anything.
Okay,
They'll say
it's
you could,
it's coming up with a plan.
that would be a good connection, but I'm not sure that isn't now designated wetlands.
And so you can't put any kind of trail over wetlands?
I think you
Or
can,
bridge.
but it's you're talking about a boardwalk.
Well, that's what I'm
You can do a
wondering.
boardwalk, yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right, we'll move on to the next project then. Project 32 is Boyd Station Road Improvements. Coming before the Planning Commission shortly is a site plan and preliminary plat for a new subdivision to go on the Schubert property in this location. In talking to them, there's going to be some improvements that they are going to have to do to this area, and then making those improvements, adding a couple of feet of roadway width for the town, and also extending that to McPhee Road. We estimate the town's portion of that cost would be roughly $300,000 at this time. That does need to be, we did anticipate putting that in next year's budget, as that project, again, could be underway here in the next few months.
Mayor Williams, no question.
Alderman Pinchot, no questions.
Alderman Burnett, no questions.
I have no questions.
Alderman Meyer, no questions.
Okay, thank you. Project 33 is Kingston Pike pedestrian crosswalk improvements. I know we've had a recent discussion with Ellen Zaviska from Knox Planning about this intersection, and she gave us some thoughts and ideas. This would be doing some of those thoughts and ideas she came up with the crosswalk hatchings and the design and kind of moving those crosswalks closer together. That would be approximately $700,000 project, and that is scheduled out into 2 fiscal years, FY 2023 for design and then FY 2024 for construction. And those would also be coordinating somewhat with this pedestrian study that we're going to be doing. So we wanted to try to get that study done first and then move on to those recommendations from the study. And this is going to be one of those, have money available to do it.
Alderman Burnett, I hate that it's that far out, but I just don't know how you move forward with that type of expenditure without having that study done. So I don't think there's any way to speed that study up, but you know, by the time 2024 is here, we're going to be too late to have a good pedestrian plan, because that's going to be very walkable, a lot of people, and I'm just afraid we're going to be too late. But without having that study, I don't know how we move it forward.
This is Alderman Meyer to echo Drew's comments. I don't know of a day that goes by that I don't see some pedestrian running through cars on this intersection. Now, maybe it's because I've got the benefit of working from home now, and I get to go to Costco, and I get to go to school, and I get to go to the cleaners and all that good stuff, and I'm on the road constantly. And I am trying to count the days that I don't see a pedestrian crossing right now. And there's very few. And so I'm with you, Drew. I wish there was a way to move it up sooner. I also, just a side note, would love to see a scramble light. So my question for you, David, is can you put a little X right there in the centers to, because I think we should have a scramble light personally. I do think that, and I know we're trying to do the best we can. We're trying to deal with all the different projects coming at us. It just makes me extraordinarily nervous when I see moms pushing these babies in these carts, and they're trying to get across the street before the light turns. And it just, to me, just from what I've seen, it's becoming dangerous. I don't know, maybe y'all see it, maybe you don't see it. I don't know, but I see it.
Are there any things we can do, Daryl, in the short term? I know that we're talking about some things, but is there any specific things we can do in the short term?
We've talked about everything that we have coming up. You have to keep in mind we have an ATMS project that's going to be changing our detection. We have loops in the lanes now; they'll have to be moving, that comes up with the next project that we're going to talk about. There's the ATMS project. There is this. We have the Jamestown Boulevard study that is going to be going on throughout this year.
Let me
It
ask
would
you
be-
this, is it even possible to, with this particular intersection, to just even do a delayed, what was that, where you delay the light for 3 seconds? Can we do that now? Is that a
I
possibility?
think we can do that, and I would prefer to go with more than 3 seconds. Give
Well-
people a little more time to get out in the lane.
Especially when school's letting out. I had no idea how many walkers there were. But there's teenagers running up and down that road constantly.
Well, they run, the
Running, the cross-country people run, but I mean, there's kids, well, and I was clueless, honestly, I didn't know until I started working from home. But every day, there's teenagers crossing that intersection, and they're on their phone, God love them, they're listening to the music, and they're not paying attention. And I love that idea, Daryl. If there's something you could do, or we could time it to according to certain times of the day. On Saturdays and Sundays, probably maybe not so much. I don't know. But most of the activity I see is around school time.
Sure.
Well, you
Well,
are seeing it in the evenings as well.
Are you?
With
Okay.
people parking over and going over to 35 North if there's
Well,
there's
that's true.
street parking. So
That is true. That's true.
any time that a pedestrian hits the button and gets the signal, it disrupts the
okay, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
coordination of that signal with the others. So it can
Doesn't-
create some congestion problems. But in times when there's not an awful lot of traffic out there, it's not a big deal. So we'll take a look at doing that. I like that idea a lot. Give people a little more time to get out there so people can see them before they hit them.
And I agree with you, and I understand that there's a give and take with that, but that sometimes congestion can be your friend in that it slows down traffic. Of course,
Right.
sometimes congestion can be people get a little irritated and they just want to get through the light and aren't paying attention. But yeah, we need to figure out, and let's make sure that our the crosswalk is very visible. Because I mean, it looks visible from here, but when you're up on it, it's not as visible as it could be.
Right. I guess the point I was trying to make a minute ago, we have quite a few projects going on, a couple of studies going on. I don't want to do anything physically out there as far as timing the pedestrian signals. That's not a physical change. I just don't want to have to dig something up and move it and then find myself 2 years from now doing it again.
Agreed.
That doesn't go over well with the public.
Agreed. I just think this is an issue, this is a good problem to have, as long as nobody gets hurt, because we have a beautiful plaza. We have N35. I think that even like those of us who've lived in town for a while, I'm not used to having that many people kind of walking around, because there wasn't anything to walk around to. And now everybody's kind of new to it. The drivers are new to it. The pedestrians are trying to figure it out, which lifts the confusion. And thank you, Louise. That was a good point. I have seen some Friday evenings, it is busy. Folks are hanging out at the plaza and they're going across the street to N35, which is what we were hoping they would do. So anything you can do, Daryl, that would be awesome.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Our next project is at the same intersection. This is Project 34, lane reassignments at Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road. I think the board has seen the CDM traffic study that was recently done with the Biddle project, and they identified several areas that we needed to look at for future improvements. This is certainly one of them. We were looking at different lane assignments to try to help get more cars through that intersection, especially the double left, or trying to create that double left turn from heading southbound on Campbell Station Road and then heading taking that left onto Kingston Pike, like you're heading toward Kroger. So there's more to it than just that, but this would look at design, right of way, and construction of around $160,000. And that project is slated for FY 2023 for design and then FY 2024 for construction.
So Darryl, just for clarity, we expect that our ATMS project will be finished at this point?
That should be, I want to say a year from this summer, so a year and a half. So
Okay.
yes, that would put us, is that not correct? That would put us into 23.
Okay. All right. I like that we're not making the width wider. It doesn't look, well, too much wider, but you're adding in what we need to add in to get more traffic going through.
Right. I'm not really crazy about lanes that are narrower than about 10 feet, even at an intersection, but you know, there are publications that say that's reasonable.
We just need to be cognizant of when you have those two left-hand turn lanes, is the pedestrian visible from both of those people making left-hand turns? So that's my biggest concern. Obviously, that's anyone's concern who's thinking about pedestrians. So.
Okay, any other comments on this particular project from the board?
No comments.
All right, we'll move on to project 35, and this is Grigsby Chapel Road, Fretz Road traffic signal. I know this was brought up at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen workshop with our retreat a few weeks ago. We looked at this two different ways. One was with a traffic signal and one was with a roundabout. This is by far the cheaper option, is to go with a signal in this area. Again, right now we have it slated for FY 2024 to do the whole project at $270,000, and that would include design, any kind of minor right-of-way that we may need to acquire there, and then also construction.
So this is Alderman Meyer. So I've obviously already demonstrated this is probably the most passionate CIP project to me this evening. I know we're all tired. And so maybe, David, you were strategic in trying to make this item 35, thinking I'd get worn down, but no. So here's the deal. So I've been in office now for 3 years. And I guess one disadvantage when you run for office and you don't have an opponent, maybe you get a little lazy. I don't know. But over the course of the 3 years, I have sat in many folks' living rooms talking to them about Grigsby Chapel, and I didn't do it when I was running because I didn't have an opponent. And their stories are very capturing. And I'm not going to share every one of them with you, but the ones that I will share with you happen to be folks from Wyndham Hall. And one gentleman in particular sat there in his living room and explained to me how his in-laws died from a car accident that occurred outside of Wyndham Hall. Now, his in-laws were elderly, and they had a lot of comorbidities. But the doctor made it very clear that they passed away prematurely because they were in a car accident with some young individual driving very fast and hit them and ended their life. So when I say that, and there's other stories, not that dramatic, but there's other stories I've heard where there's near misses from different residents in Fox Den, in Berkeley Park, in Oakley Downs, and then, as I mentioned, Wyndham Hall. At the same time, my daughters, I think everybody knows, one of my daughters goes to St. John Newman School off of St. John Court. And I've had the opportunity to speak to many families. Matter of fact, I've heard from over 150 families that take their kids to St. John Newman, and they feel that they are risking their lives when they're turning left off of Grigsby Chapel to take their child to school. Now, granted, not all those folks are from Farragut, but a lot of them are. And in fact, a lot of them are my neighbors in Fox Run who tell me every day they drive their kid to school and they feel that they are risking their lives because they're trying to turn left onto St. John Court. Most interestingly, we live here in the South and everybody's very polite and God knows we love that. But twice I've had to get out of my car when I pick up my kid and go over to Grigsby Chapel and wave to the very polite people to not stop to let all of the traffic out from St. John Court because they're going to have a back-end collision. Twice I've done that. So I've been very quiet and tried to be very cooperative the last years because I know McPhee Park has been a big deal and our parks are very important. But in my opinion, the safety of the folks who live around Grigsby Chapel is the highest importance of anything we've talked about tonight. And whether we like it or not, the residents who happen to be the top of our org chart, because we all work for them, and you all know you work for us, the BOMA, and we work for them. Those folks are telling me they don't feel safe. Those folks are telling me they've lost loved ones due to car accidents on Grigsby Chapel. That should be shocking to everybody on this call. So I'm sorry if I'm insulted, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm insulted that we're doing a stoplight 2 years out. And I'll be honest with y'all, I'm new to this. I should have, and I will own it, I should have campaigned and gone door to door and talked to the people that I represent 3 years ago, and I didn't do it. But I've done it the last 2 years. And they're not happy. They're not happy at all. They think that we live in this golden tower building parks while folks every day are trying to get their kids to school or they're trying to drive to Turkey Creek, and the speeds are exorbitant. And the issue is, it's not, Grigsby Chapel is just, maybe it's supposed to be a collector on map. It's a collector. It's arterial because I drive it 2 or 3 times a day minimum. And I see the license plates. You want to know where they're from? Loudoun County. And because whether we like it or not, Grigsby Chapel is definitely a cut through. And when I look at the North Ward, there's only 5 or 6 subdivisions. And I did a quick little count here of the North Ward subdivisions that don't even touch or have anything to do with Grigsby Chapel. But Grigsby Chapel doesn't have to do with just Woodchase and Berkeley Park and Fox Den. I live in Fox Run and I drive it all the time. Folks who live in Andover drive it all the time. The problem is folks that live in Loudoun County and Lenore City drive it all the time too, because they're trying to get to Turkey Creek. So excuse my passion as I get frustrated because I am done talking about parks. We have got to do something with Grigsby Chapel, and we have to work together, and $270,000 for a stoplight is not going to do it. So I'm proposing a circle at St. John Court, and I'm asking for a stoplight at Fretz Road. And by the way, I'm going to call on the vice mayor here in just a second, because this shouldn't be new news to anybody. Because apparently a lot of our constituents have gone to the Planning Commission multiple times. Matter of fact, I think Noah Myers was even quoted by saying he thought that there was a big problem on Grigsby Chapel. And I don't put words in his mouth, but this shouldn't be new news to anyone. And I've held my tongue, I'm going to hold it. So we can do whatever we want to do with the parks, but we have got to invest in the safety of the residents of the North Ward of our hometown, hands down. Now, Vice Mayor, would you please share with us your history with our constituents going to the Planning Commission, asking, begging for help, and them feeling that they weren't listened to because we were too busy building parks?
It's not that they're not listened to. It's been a struggle. This has been, and obviously Mayor Williams is very aware of this as well as sitting on the Planning Commission, that when new development has been proposed, this is one of the issues that we've struggled with, because technically by manual of uniform traffic control devices, those 2 intersections don't meet warrants for the numbers traveling through them. So it's been a struggle to say, okay, we want to do this, but at this point we're looking at it, and it was proposed a couple maybe a year or 2 ago when we were talking about Grigsby Park, that what we're looking for is an opportunity to stop traffic, to give opportunity for the residents to exit their neighborhoods safely, to give some gaps so that they can exit their neighborhoods safely. The biggest issue is we have a lot of neighborhoods right there between Fretz and Parkside, Grigsby Chapel, Campbell Station Road intersection, and they all really struggle. I've sat down with Ramsgate. They say the same thing, although theirs is getting out, but also they know what time not to get in, they to get out of their house by a certain amount of time because the traffic backs up as well, which is not a fix that we're going to come up with anytime soon because that's a stacking problem at the schools. But so there are a lot of issues on that street, so that Grigsby Chapel, and it was once upon a time a local road, a local street, a local collector, and it's turned into an arterial over the years, and we know that. So certainly I advocate for a light at Fretz Road. I don't think we have enough room for, I would not put a roundabout at Fretz Road. I don't think we have enough turning movements going left from Grigsby Chapel onto Fretz to make that roundabout effective to create the spacing that we need. And it's a lot more expensive than putting in a traffic light. I would like for us to take a look at the St. John Court and Grigsby Chapel as well. I don't think there's room for a roundabout, although a roundabout would probably be very effective there. My concern is that it's a pretty tight space there. So I agree with Alderman Meyer. I think that we could certainly move the Fretz Road traffic light into fiscal year 22. We've just pushed off two big projects that total 585 and pushed them off to 2023. We could certainly move the Fretz Road light up tonight into 2022, and then have a look at have Daryl take a good look at what the possibilities are for the St. John Court, Grigsby Chapel, and then come back to us with that.
If I can jump in here, we have a signal warrant analysis going on right now at Fretz Road in Grigsby Chapel. Typically, if a location meets warrants that are outlined in the METCD, if it meets warrants, it's probably a good idea. If it doesn't meet warrants, it's probably a bad idea. Now, there are exceptions, and that's where we really have to look at it close. And I want to have conversations with our consultant. It's Cannon & Cannon that's doing the warrant analysis. If it doesn't meet warrants, I'd like to know the pros and cons of having a signal there anyway before I can recommend one. As far as roundabouts go, roundabouts would help people coming out of Fretz Road as well as St. John Court. But during peak hours, particularly in the morning, it's going to back traffic up that's headed east on Grigsby Chapel. It's going to back traffic up where you now have some gaps for people on the side roads to pull out. It would space the cars beautifully to where there would be no real gaps when you have peak demand.
So Daryl, you're saying roundabouts would do that? I'm sorry, it's not
yes, because it would back traffic up to the west, and it takes a certain amount of time to get through the thing where you might have a few gaps anyway. We do, otherwise nobody could pull out. I think it would evenly space the traffic between St. John Court and Fretz Road. And we have a lot of subdivisions. I just looked at that. It's about 0.8 of a mile between those two.
So Daryl, are you thinking roundabouts?
We could be helping the people coming out at Fretz Road, but making things worse for the people just east of there.
With a stoplight or a roundabout?
With the roundabout. Now, a signal obviously can create gaps. So, that may be the only way we could that I could recommend it if it doesn't meet warrants already.
Daryl, when do you have those new warrants back?
Hoping to have them back before tonight. Apparently they had a problem with the data with their counts, and they had to recount them. They should have them, the counts in hand this week. a warrant analysis at that point, I think they ought to be able to do it in another week or so.
Okay,
What do
we'll
you have
it
to
by
do,
the next
Gerald?
meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Drew. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
Oops, I was just said, so we'll definitely have that before the next meeting, right?
Well, we should, yes.
Thanks.
So I would like added to for our conversation, some vehicle speed mitigation at St. John Court. And I'll leave that up to you, Daryl.
Oh,
What you suggest. Like, we waited long enough.
I
We've
understand.
waited long enough. The North Ward has waited long enough. So both intersections need to be discussed in this process. So I'm looking to you, to the staff, to come up with some suggestions, or we can meet, if we need to meet individually. So I'm going to come over for a tour and see how cramped all the staff are. So we can just tag on to that, a meeting, the three of us, and we'll talk about it. But the North Ward folks have waited long enough. This is not an option. It's not an option. Both intersections need to be addressed this year. That's all I have to
No,
say.
McMar, we're happy to meet with you on that anytime and discuss that. Any other aldermen have any comments, questions about this particular item tonight?
Mayor Williams, I think Scott's covered it. The need's there. It's just figuring out what we do to help the problems that he's discussed. And I think Daryl's ahead of the game a little bit with the study. So hopefully they can figure out their data and then can come back with us. Maybe the next board meeting, we can have a little bit more conversation prior. We can schedule, I think we're going to have a workshop anyway prior to the board meeting. So we can make sure we fit this into the workshop.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. That is the last of our projects that we had on our list tonight. So I think Allison, we had a revenue kind of showing you where the revenues would go and the expenditure would go from year to year to year. With the suggestions and the comments from the board and everything else we talked about tonight, I have a feeling all those numbers are going to be wrong when we redo this here in the next few days. But the main point I'd like to make with the board is we have a balanced CIP heading out from now until the next 6 years based on the projects and everything that we have talked about tonight. At the end of 2027, we're looking at around 31.6 million overall, million in projects, or excuse me, no, we're looking at 25 million in projects overall, and then 31.6 million in revenue. What we're doing this year is, since we did not transfer hardly any funds last year due to the pandemic into the CIP from general fund, we're going to be making a transfer from general fund of $6 million into the CIP fund to help kickstart and get these projects going. And then the way we usually do it is we allocate from year 2023 out to 2027, $2 million transfer from general fund, just because we don't know what the future holds, but it's been historically, we've been able to put $3 million or more into the CIP each and every year. There are some years that we will have to pull from CIP reserves a little bit, but I think if you look at the available fund balance at the end of 2027, you can still see that we project about $6 million in available fund balance in the CIP with all the projects that we discussed tonight. So I think, again, from my perspective, we're in good shape based on those projects. Obviously, things come up, new projects come into play. And things can get moved out and moved in. So, but right now, from the individual snapshot, it looks like for FY 2022, we'd have around 11.4 million in available fund balance. But again, we talked about already moving some projects up into 2022 and a couple of them out. So we'll have to redo those numbers, and at our next workshop, we'll have a revised CIP to review with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
Hey, David, I noticed that obviously we don't have anything projected for stormwater projects. So obviously that's kind of change is going to change up our total assigned balance and available fund balance. Obviously, will it not?
Well, again, we're putting $200,000 a year away in for stormwater improvements. Now, when we get a particular project, we'll take that and allocate that money for that project. If we see more things that we need to do based on the master plan that we start doing and things come up right away and we need to put more money away, then we'll talk to the board about that at that time. I think
Okay.
right now what we're planning is just 200,000 a year to put aside for any of those future projects that we may have.
Okay, so when we do have a project show up, will you have part of the funding, a list in the funding sources will be the stormwater fund?
Correct. You
Allison?
can see it. You can see at the bottom of the screen. We haven't started this yet, but at the
Okay.
bottom of the screen before you, it says stormwater projects.
Yeah.
So let's say at the end of this year, or maybe FY 2022, we didn't spend any money on stormwater. You'd see a $200,000 item down there in assigned fund balance for stormwater. So we would just
Okay.
take that money and assign it to fund balance for stormwater. And then you would be able to use it the next year. If you had a project that was 300,000 or whatever,
Yep.
we could pull from that fund balance to pay for that.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board about the CIP for this evening?
It's a good thing we didn't have a regular meeting.
It's a very good thing. Yes, ma'am.
Phew.
All
All right. Well, I thank you for your time and I thank you for your patience. This helps us out a lot, try to get everything reprioritized. And we will certainly be getting back with the board. I know our next workshop is in 2 weeks and we'll be having several things on that agenda item. So I will get with you and let you know what time we'll need to start that.
Thank you, David and
Thank you.
Allison, for all of your efforts.
you.
Thank you, staff, for being here. I appreciate it.